Kim Min-jun's platinum cufflinks hit the marble floor of Mintech Corporation's boardroom with the sharp finality of a gavel. Around the glass conference table, 12 investors freeze mid-sentence as the billionaire CEO stands, his Armani jacket sliding off his shoulders like discarded armor. "The marriage discussion ends now," Min-jun declares, his voice cutting through the Seoul skyline visible beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. "My personal life is not a line item in your quarterly projections." Director Park Sang-woo leans forward, his calculating smile never wavering. "A 32-year-old unmarried CEO raises questions about stability, Min-jun-si. The board simply wants assurance that you understand family responsibilities." The second cufflink follows the first, clattering against Italian marble. Min-jun loosens his silk tie, each gesture a deliberation of rebellion against the corporate cage that's defined his entire existence. "Find another puppet for your marriage schemes," he says, grabbing his keys from the table. "I'm done performing." But as the elevator doors close on his shocked board members, Min-jun catches his reflection in the polished steel, perfectly groomed, impossibly wealthy, and desperately alone. Tonight, he decides, he'll discover what life feels like beyond the glass towers of privilege. 4 hours later, stripped of designer armor and corporate titles, he sits invisible in La Cocina de Abuela, a tiny restaurant in Los Angeles' Boyle Heights, where the scent of authentic Mexican spices mingles with laughter in Spanish. Then she appears, and his world stops rotating. Catalina Vega balances 3 plates with the grace of someone born to nourish others, her wavy hair escaping its ponytail as she navigates between tables with infectious warmth. When she stumbles slightly, sending mole sauce cascading across his simple white shirt, their eyes meet for the first time. "Dios mío, I'm so sorry," she gasps, switching to accented English as panic flushes her golden cheeks. Min-jun gently catches her trembling hands before she can attempt to clean the mess. "Please, it's perfectly fine," he says, offering the first genuine smile that's crossed his face in months. "What's your name?" But can a man who spent his life buying everything learn that some hearts aren't for sale? If you've ever wondered whether love can bridge the gap between boardrooms and family kitchens, whether authenticity can triumph over expectation, then you know why this story matters. Subscribe to join us as we explore what happens when a Korean billionaire discovers that the richest treasures can't be purchased. They can only be earned through vulnerability, cultural curiosity, and the courage to choose love over legacy. The reflection staring back at Min-jun from his penthouse bathroom mirror belongs to a stranger. Gone is the perfectly pressed executive uniform, replaced by faded jeans and a simple black t-shirt purchased from a convenience store. His usually immaculate hair falls naturally across his forehead, and without the armor of expensive accessories, he looks almost human. 3 months have passed since that first encounter at La Cocina de Abuela. 3 months of secret visits to a world that operates on completely different principles than the corporate hierarchy he's known all his life. In Seoul, respect is measured in business cards and honorific titles. In Catalina's kitchen, respect is earned through genuine conversation and shared laughter. Tonight marks their 15th clandestine dinner together, and Min-jun still feels the same nervous anticipation that accompanied their first shared meal. Catalina doesn't know he owns a corporation worth $30 billion. To her, he's simply Jun, a quiet man who claims to work in business consulting and shows unexpected enthusiasm for learning about Mexican culinary traditions. The restaurant buzzes with its usual evening energy as Min-jun enters, automatically scanning for Catalina's presence. She's at table 6, explaining the history of Mole Poblano to a young couple, her hands painting pictures in the air as she describes the complex dance of chocolate and chili peppers that creates Mexico's most celebrated sauce. "Jun!" Her face lights up when she spots him, that radiant smile that's become the highlight of his carefully structured days. "Your usual table is ready, and I have something special to show you tonight." She leads him to the corner booth that's become their unofficial territory, a space where corporate anxiety dissolves into genuine curiosity about her culture and stories. Tonight she's wearing a traditional Mexican apron embroidered with bright flowers over her simple dress, a piece of heritage that makes her beauty even more striking. "My grandmother's recipe," she announces proudly, setting down a plate of chiles and nogada, poblano peppers stuffed with seasoned meat and topped with creamy walnut sauce and pomegranate seeds. "She taught me to make this when I was 12, said it was a dish that tells the story of Mexico in every bite." Minjun studies the artfully presented dish, recognizing the precision and care that went into its creation. In his world, meals are business transactions or social obligations. Here, food is love made visible, tradition passed between generations, connection offered freely to strangers. "The colors," he observes, genuinely curious, "they're like the Mexican flag." "Exactly." Catalina's enthusiasm bubbles over as she sits across from him. "Green peppers, white sauce, red pomegranate. This dish was created to celebrate Mexico's independence, but for my family, it celebrates something deeper. The idea that we preserve our culture by sharing it generously, not by protecting it jealously." The philosophy hits Minjun unexpectedly hard. Korean business culture operates on carefully guarded secrets, hierarchical respect, and protective competition. Catalina's approach to heritage, open, generous, inclusive, challenges everything he's been taught about preserving valuable things. "Tell me about your grandmother," he says, genuinely interested in understanding the foundation of this woman's warmth. Catalina's expression grows tender with memory. Abuela Rosa raised 6 children while running a small restaurant in Guadalajara. She used to say that cooking isn't just about feeding bodies, it's about nourishing souls. When people shared her table, they became part of her family, even if only for one meal. She sounds remarkable. She's the reason I became a chef. Not for money or fame, but because food builds bridges between people who might otherwise remain strangers. Catalina pauses, studying his face with gentle curiosity. "You always ask such thoughtful questions about my culture, Jun. Tell me about yours. What traditions shaped the man sitting across from me?" The question freezes Minjun's carefully rehearsed responses. How can he explain Korean corporate culture without revealing his position within it? How can he describe Chaebol family dynamics without exposing his identity as an heir to billions? Korean culture values structure, he says carefully. Respect for elders, clear hierarchies, the importance of bringing honor to your family name. But sometimes, he trails off, unwilling to voice his growing doubts about the system that raised him. "Sometimes structure becomes a cage," Catalina suggests gently. Her perceptiveness startles him. "How did you have the posture of someone who spent years sitting in formal meetings, but your eyes relax when you talk about food or family. There's a part of you that wants to escape something, isn't there?" Before Minjun can formulate a response that doesn't expose his deception, Catalina's younger sister, Elena, approaches their table with a knowing smile. "Catalina, you're being rude to your friend," Elena teases in accented English. "He's been trying to eat while you tell life stories." "Elena," Catalina blushes, but her embarrassment is playful rather than genuinely mortified. "Jun, this is my sister Elena. She thinks I talk too much about family history. I think you could talk about making agua fresca and turn it into an epic romance." Elena laughs, then extends her hand to Minjun. "Nice to finally meet the mysterious businessman who's been making my sister smile so much lately." The introduction carries implications that make Minjun's chest tighten, with equal parts hope and terror. He's been making her smile? Their dinners mean something to her beyond polite customer service. "The pleasure is mine," he manages, accepting Elena's handshake while trying to process the revelation that Catalina discusses their meetings with her family. "Elena owns a boutique in downtown LA," Catalina explains. "She's been trying to convince me to cater her fashion events, but I prefer the intimacy of restaurant service." "Different ways of building community," Elena agrees. "Though I still think you're wasting your talent on, no offense, Jun, businessmen who probably can't tell the difference between authentic mole and the jarred stuff from grocery stores." The casual comment hits closer to truth than Elena realizes. 6 months ago, Minjun wouldn't have been able to distinguish authentic Mexican cuisine from Americanized interpretations. His palate had been trained on expensive sushi and French cuisine, not the complex layered flavors that Catalina has been teaching him to appreciate. Actually, Minjun surprises himself by saying, Catalina has been educating me about the subtleties of traditional Mexican cooking. I'm learning to recognize the difference between recipes that honor heritage and those that prioritize convenience over authenticity. Both sisters stare at him with expressions of pleased surprise. It's the first time he's demonstrated genuine retention of Catalina's cultural lessons, proof that he's been listening not just to her words, but to the deeper significance behind them. See? Catalina says to Elena, her smile radiant with validation. I told you he was different. Different. The word echoes in Minjun's mind long after Elena returns to the kitchen, and Catalina excuses herself to check on other customers. In his world, being different is dangerous. It threatens the conformity that maintains corporate stability. In Catalina's world, being different appears to be cherished. He watches her move between tables, greeting regular customers by name, asking about their families, treating each interaction as an opportunity for genuine connection rather than professional obligation. The warmth she extends isn't performance or strategy. It's simply who she is, as natural as breathing. When she returns to his table with a small plate of tres leches cake, her expression carries a shy hopefulness that makes his heart race. I made this specifically for you, she admits quietly. It's not on the menu tonight, but I remembered you mentioning that you have a weakness for desserts that balance sweet and subtle flavors. The cake is perfect. Delicate sponge soaked in 3 different milks, topped with cinnamon that adds warmth without overwhelming sweetness. But what moves Minjun isn't the technical execution. It's the thoughtfulness behind the gesture. Catalina remembered a casual comment from 2 weeks ago and translated it into something tangible, personal, caring. This is incredible, he says honestly. Thank you for thinking of me. I think of you more than I probably should, she admits, her cheeks flushing prettily in the restaurant's warm lighting. The confession hangs between them, shifting the dynamic from friendly, regular, and attentive server to something far more complex and dangerous. Minjun realizes he's reached a crossroads that will either deepen their connection or destroy it entirely. He could tell her the truth, that he's one of Korea's wealthiest men, that he commands corporate respect through inherited power, that their worlds are separated by economic chasms that most people never bridge. Or he can continue the deception, protecting this fragile thing growing between them while living a lie that becomes more complicated with each passing day. Catalina, he begins, then stops as his phone buzzes insistently in his pocket. The caller ID shows his assistant's number, and he knows Secretary Young would never interrupt his evening unless something catastrophic was happening at the company. I'm sorry, I need to take this. He apologizes, stepping away from the table. Sir. Young's voice is tight with controlled panic. Director Park has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's claiming you've become unfit to lead the company due to emotional instability and questionable decision-making. The corporate world comes crashing back into Minjun's consciousness like cold water. His 3 months of escape have consequences, and those consequences are now threatening everything he's worked to build. What evidence does he have? Minjun asks quietly, moving further from Catalina's table. Your recent absences, the way you walked out of the last board meeting, and... Young hesitates. Sir, he's been having you followed. He has photographs of you at this restaurant, with this woman. He's prepared to use your relationship as evidence of compromised judgment. Minjun's blood turns to ice. Director Park has weaponized his happiness, turned his growing feelings for Catalina into ammunition against his professional competence. The realization that he's endangered not only his own position, but potentially Catalina's safety and reputation, hits him like a physical blow. Cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week, he instructs. And Young, increase security at the restaurant, discreetly. Don't let them know, but make sure she's protected. When he returns to the table, Catalina takes one look at his face and knows something fundamental has changed. Bad news? She asks gently. Work complications, he admits, which is simultaneously truthful and completely inadequate. I might need to travel for a few days, handle some urgent business matters. Of course, she nods, though disappointment flickers across her features. Will you be back? The question carries weight beyond its simple words. She's asking if this is goodbye, if the connection they've been building will survive the intrusion of his other life. Min-jun realizes that his next words will determine not only their future, but the kind of man he chooses to be. I'll be back, he promises, and means it with every fiber of his being. Catalina, I need you to know that these past 3 months, getting to know you, learning about your culture and your family, it's been the most real experience of my adult life. Her smile returns, soft and understanding. I feel the same way, Jun. Whatever business crisis you're facing, handle it quickly and come home to us, okay? Home. The word follows him out of the restaurant and into the Los Angeles night. A concept that has nothing to do with penthouses or corporate headquarters, and everything to do with a woman who makes tres leches cake for shy businessmen and believes in sharing culture as an act of love. But as his driver navigates toward LAX for the red-eye flight to Seoul, Min-jun knows that the hardest battle of his life is just beginning. And this time, he's fighting not just for corporate control, but for the right to choose love over legacy. How do you protect someone who doesn't know she needs protection from a world she's never imagined? The Mintech Corporation boardroom feels like a mausoleum when Min-jun enters at 7 a.m. sharp, 15 minutes before the emergency meeting Director Park orchestrated to destroy his career. 12 board members sit around the glass conference table like judges at a tribunal, their expressions ranging from confused concern to barely concealed anticipation of corporate blood sport. Gentlemen, Min-jun greets them formally, his voice carrying the controlled authority that served him for 8 years as CEO. He's back in his armor, perfectly pressed Brioni suit, Italian leather shoes, platinum cufflinks that catch Seoul's morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Director Park occupies the head of the table with predatory confidence, a manila folder thick with surveillance photographs positioned strategically beside his coffee cup. The smile he offers Min-jun could freeze champagne. So glad you could make it, CEO Nim. We were beginning to worry that your recent priorities might prevent you from attending to company business. The honorific drips with sarcasm, a deliberate insult designed to establish dominance before the real attack begins. Min-jun takes his seat without acknowledging the provocation, his expression perfectly neutral despite the storm building in his chest. I assume this emergency involves actual corporate crises rather than personal gossip? Oh, but personal behavior becomes corporate crisis when it affects leadership capacity. Director Park purrs, opening his folder with theatrical precision. The board deserves to understand why our CEO has been unavailable for critical decision-making processes. The first photograph hits the table like a declaration of war. Min-jun and Catalina sharing dinner at La Cocina de Abuela, her face animated with laughter while he listens with obvious fascination. The image captures genuine happiness, real connection, everything his corporate life lacks. And in Director Park's hands, it becomes evidence of professional inadequacy. 3 months of surveillance, Park announces to the room. Our CEO abandoning board meetings for romantic dinners with a foreign service worker. Behavior that raises serious questions about judgment, priorities, and fitness to lead a company of this magnitude. Board member Kim Sung-ho leans forward with false concern. The woman appears to be economically disadvantaged. Is this a relationship based on financial dependency? Are company resources being misappropriated for personal entertainment? The implications hit Min-jun like physical blows. They're not just questioning his competence. They're suggesting he's either naive enough to be manipulated by a gold digger or corrupt enough to misuse corporate funds for personal relationships. Both characterizations would justify immediate removal from his position. My personal relationships are not subject to board approval, Min-jun responds evenly. though his hands clench involuntarily at the suggestion that Catalina might be motivated by money. Aren't they? Park's voice sharpens for the kill. When those relationships compromise judgment, create vulnerability to external manipulation, and demonstrate emotional instability that affects corporate decision-making, the shareholders have invested billions based on confidence in consistent, rational leadership. Another photograph joins the first, Min-jun helping Catalina carry supplies to her car, his expression gentle and protective. In the context of corporate Seoul, the image might as well show him betraying state secrets to foreign agents. Look at these pictures, colleagues. Park continues his prosecution. Our CEO, heir to one of Korea's most respected business dynasties, reduced to manual labor for a woman who doesn't even know his real identity. This isn't romance. It's a psychological breakdown disguised as infatuation. The accusation lands with devastating precision because it contains enough truth to be believable. Min-jun has been carrying restaurant supplies, washing dishes after hours, performing tasks that would shock his corporate peers, and he's been happier doing it than he's ever been in boardrooms or executive offices. You've been lying to her about who you are, Director Kim observes with surgical accuracy, building a relationship on fundamental deception. What happens when she discovers the truth? How does this potential scandal affect the company's reputation? Min-jun realizes they've constructed a perfect trap. If he admits to deceiving Catalina, it demonstrates dishonesty and poor judgment. If he reveals the truth to her now, under pressure, it appears manipulative and desperate. Either choice validates their argument for his removal. The woman's immigration status is also questionable, Park adds with casual cruelty. Dating an undocumented individual creates legal liability for the company and its leadership. That's a lie, Min-jun snaps, his careful control finally cracking. Catalina is a legal resident with proper documentation. Your surveillance is harassment, not due diligence. Ah, so you admit to detailed knowledge of her personal circumstances? Park pounces on the admission. How much company time have you invested in investigating this foreign national's background? How many corporate resources have been diverted for personal use? The room fills with the electric tension of a hunter cornering prey. Every response Min-jun offers becomes ammunition against him. Every defense transforms into evidence of compromised judgment. He's been outmaneuvered by a master strategist who's had months to prepare this attack. The solution is simple, Park announces with false magnanimity. Resign voluntarily, with dignity intact, and we'll handle the transition quietly. Continue this destructive behavior, and we'll be forced to call a no-confidence vote that will expose these indiscretions publicly. The threat is clear: voluntary resignation or corporate humiliation that will destroy not only Min-jun's career, but potentially damage Catalina's reputation and safety. Park has weaponized the relationship that's brought Min-jun more happiness than anything in his adult life. I need time to consider. You have until 5 p.m. today. Park interrupts, his mask of civility finally dropping. Any delay will be interpreted as further evidence of impaired judgment. Choose quickly, CEO Nim, before the choice gets made for you. The meeting dissolves into sidebar conversations and knowing glances as board members mentally redistribute corporate power in the aftermath of Min-jun's anticipated departure. He sits frozen in his leather chair, watching his life's work crumble because he dared to seek authentic human connection beyond the glass towers of privilege. His phone buzzes with a text from Catalina. Missing you already. Made extra mold today because it reminds me of our conversations about complex flavors. Can't wait for you to come home. The message breaks something inside his chest. She doesn't know that her feelings for him have been transformed into weapons against everything he's built. She doesn't know that loving him might destroy both their worlds. Secretary Young appears at his elbow with practiced discretion. Sir, your 10 a.m. appointment is here. Min-jun looks up blankly, his mind still processing the systematic destruction of his corporate life. What appointment? Your brother, sir. Kim Tae-jun insisted it was urgent family business. The name hits Min-jun like cold water. His younger brother, who chose photography over corporate succession, who deliberately distanced himself from the family business, to pursue authentic artistic expression rather than inherited wealth. Taejun represents everything Min-jun has been yearning for: creative freedom, genuine relationships, life beyond the confines of economic obligation. Send him in. Taejun enters the boardroom looking like everything Min-jun used to be before corporate responsibility hardened him into executive armor. Messy hair, vintage leather jacket, camera slung across his shoulder with casual confidence. At 29, he possesses the relaxed authenticity that Min-jun has been desperately seeking through his relationship with Catalina. Hyung, Taejun greets him with genuine warmth, then glances around the empty boardroom with curious concern. Rough morning? You look like someone declared war on your favorite building. Something like that, Min-jun admits, gesturing for his brother to sit. What brings you to the corporate wasteland? Usually you avoid these glass towers like cultural contamination. Funny you should mention that, Taejun grins, settling into the chair recently occupied by Director Park. I've been working on a photography project about authentic cultural experiences in LA. Food traditions, family restaurants, places where heritage gets passed down through genuine human connection rather than marketing strategies. Min-jun's blood chills as he realizes where this conversation might be heading. There's this amazing Mexican restaurant in Boyle Heights, Taejun continues enthusiastically. La Cocina de Abuela. The chef is incredible, not just technically, but the way she talks about food as cultural bridge building, family memory preservation. Really inspiring stuff for the documentary I'm putting together. Taejun? Her name's Catalina Vega, his brother interrupts, pulling out his phone to show photographs. Most photogenic subject I've worked with in months. And she mentioned the most interesting thing. Apparently, there's this mysterious businessman who's been coming to her restaurant, learning about Mexican culinary traditions with genuine enthusiasm rather than tourist curiosity. The photographs on Taejun's phone show Catalina in her element, hands shaping masa for tortillas, explaining mold techniques to interested customers, laughing with Elena as they prepare traditional dishes. She's radiant, authentic, everything Min-jun has been drawn to across the cultural and economic divide that separates their worlds. She seemed really fond of this guy. Taejun continues with innocent enthusiasm. Said he asks thoughtful questions about family recipes, cultural significance, the way food builds communities. Described him as someone who understands that learning about another culture is about respect, not consumption. Min-jun stares at the photographs, realizing that his brother has inadvertently become involved in the same world that's currently destroying his corporate life. The coincidence feels impossible, dangerous, loaded with implications he doesn't want to examine. Why are you telling me this? Because, Taejun's expression grows serious. I think you need to see what authentic living looks like. You've been miserable for years, Hyung. Going through the motions of corporate leadership without any real passion or purpose. This woman, her family, their approach to preserving culture through generous sharing rather than protective hoarding, it's everything you've been searching for. You don't understand the complications. I understand that you've been sneaking off to LA for months, abandoning board meetings and corporate obligations to spend time in a world that makes you happy for the first time since college. Taejun interrupts with startling insight. Hyung told me about your travel patterns, your mood improvements, the way you've been humanizing rather than just managing. Min-jun realizes his brother has been conducting his own form of surveillance, motivated by concern rather than corporate ambition. The question is, Taejun continues, are you going to let fear and social expectations destroy the best thing that's happened to you in years? Or are you going to fight for something real? Before Min-jun can respond, his phone rings with Director Park's number. The call represents the final ultimatum: capitulate to corporate blackmail or watch his relationship with Catalina become collateral damage in a boardroom war. Don't answer it, Taejun advises quietly. Whatever they're threatening, whatever leverage they think they have, remember that the only power they possess is the power you give them. You're 32 years old, Hyung. When did you start believing that other people get to choose how you live? The question cuts through every rationalization Min-jun has constructed to justify his corporate imprisonment. When did he surrender his right to pursue happiness? When did he accept that loving someone from a different world constituted betrayal of family expectations? She doesn't know who I really am, he admits quietly. I've been lying to her for 3 months, pretending to be someone I'm not because I was afraid she'd reject me for what I represent. So tell her the truth. Taejun shrugs. If she loves the man you've been when you're with her, she'll love the man you really are. If she doesn't, then you'll know the relationship wasn't built on the foundation you thought it was. And if the board destroys my career, if they make our relationship into a corporate scandal that damages everything I've worked to build, then you'll discover whether your identity is really tied to a job title, or whether it's connected to something deeper, the kind of man you choose to be when no one's watching, no one's judging, and the only expectation is authentic human connection. The phone stops ringing, then immediately starts again. Director Park's patience has expired, and the corporate world is demanding immediate capitulation to its terms. Min-jun stares at his brother's photographs of Catalina, seeing in her face the happiness he's discovered over 3 months of careful deception and growing authenticity. The woman who believes in sharing culture as an act of love, who creates bridges instead of walls, who makes tres leches cake for shy businessmen, and asks thoughtful questions about their dreams and fears. Help me, he says quietly. Help me figure out how to choose her without destroying everything else. Taejun's smile is radiant with relief and determination. Now we're talking, Hyung. Let's go save your love story. But neither brother realizes that 3,000 miles away, Catalina is about to discover the truth about her mysterious businessman in the most devastating way possible, and that some secrets are too big to survive even the most generous heart. What happens when the woman who teaches cultural bridge building discovers that the man she's falling for has been living on the other side of an invisible wall? Catalina hums softly as she arranges fresh marigolds on each table at La Cocina de Abuela, the late afternoon sun streaming through the restaurant's windows and casting golden highlights in her wavy hair. It's been 4 days since Jun left for his business trip, and she finds herself preparing for his return with the kind of anticipatory joy that surprises her with its intensity. Elena watches from behind the counter, folding cloth napkins with practiced efficiency while observing her sister's obvious happiness with amused concern. "You're glowing, Hermana," Elena comments, switching between Spanish and English as the sisters often do when they're alone. "This businessman of yours has quite an effect on your mood." "He's different," Catalina admits, adjusting a flower arrangement with unnecessary precision to hide her blush. "When he asks about our family traditions, it's not curiosity, it's respect. Like he genuinely wants to understand what makes our culture beautiful, not just exotic to him. And you're falling for him." It's a statement rather than a question, delivered with the gentle directness that defines their sisterly relationship. Elena has watched Catalina navigate dating in Los Angeles for 5 years, observing her sister's pattern of attracting men who fetishize her heritage rather than honoring it. "Maybe," Catalina confesses, then immediately corrects herself. "Yes, definitely yes. He makes me feel seen, Elena. Not as a fascinating cultural experience, but as a person whose thoughts and dreams matter beyond their entertainment value. Have you told him about your feelings?" "Not directly, but I think he knows. The way he looks at me when I explain family recipes, how he remembers details from conversations weeks ago, the care he takes with words when he asks about personal things." Catalina trails off, her expression softening with memory. "I made tres leches specifically for him last week, and he understood that it wasn't just dessert. It was an invitation." Elena sets down her napkins and moves to stand beside her sister, studying Catalina's face with protective concern. "What do you actually know about him, though? His work, his family, where he lives when he's not traveling?" "Enough," Catalina says, though her certainty wavers slightly under Elena's gentle interrogation. "He works in business consulting, travels frequently for client meetings, has a complicated relationship with family expectations. He's kind, thoughtful, curious about other cultures without being condescending about them. But no specifics. No last name, no company details, no concrete information that would help you contact him if something happened. The observation hits Catalina like cold water. In 3 months of deepening emotional connection, June has remained mysteriously vague about the practical details of his life. She's attributed his privacy to natural reserve, cultural differences, or professional discretion. But Elena's questions highlight the peculiarity of dating someone who exists only in the present tense. You think he's hiding something important? I think men who are serious about relationships usually share basic information about their lives, Elena replies gently. Phone numbers, addresses, workplace details, family names. The fact that you can't contact him when he travels suggests either he's married or he's living some kind of double life. Before Catalina can defend June's character, the restaurant's television catches her attention with a breaking news bulletin. The screen shows a familiar Korean face, impossibly handsome, perfectly groomed, wearing an expensive suit that screams executive authority. The resemblance to June is so strong it makes her chest tighten with impossible recognition. Turn up the volume, she instructs Elena, her voice strange and distant. Kim Min-jun, CEO of Mintech Corporation, one of South Korea's largest technology conglomerates, the news anchor reports. Sources close to the company suggest significant internal conflicts regarding leadership succession and personal conduct issues that may affect corporate stability. The sound fades to white noise as Catalina stares at the screen in growing horror. The man identified as Kim Min-jun has June's eyes, June's smile, June's way of tilting his head when he's thinking carefully about his words. But this man owns buildings that scrape the sky, commands corporate empires worth billions of dollars, represents everything about wealth and power that exists in a different universe from her family restaurant. No, she whispers, her hand rising involuntarily to her throat. That's not... It can't be... But even as her mind rejects the possibility, her heart recognizes the truth with devastating clarity. The careful way Jun pronounces English words, his knowledge of business concepts that seemed oddly sophisticated for a consultant, his reluctance to discuss personal details that might reveal too much about his real identity. Catalina? Elena's voice seems to come from very far away. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. He lied to me, Catalina breathes, still staring at the television screen where Min-jun's corporate photograph appears beside footage of Seoul's business district. For 3 months, every conversation, every shared meal, every moment when I thought we were building something real, he was lying. The betrayal hits her like a physical blow. Not just the deception about his wealth, but the deeper violation of trust involved in letting her reveal her culture, her dreams, her growing feelings to someone who was essentially performing an elaborate charade. She thinks about all the times she worried about impressing him with authentic Mexican cuisine, all the stories she shared about her family's struggles with economic insecurity, all the vulnerability she offered to a man who could probably buy her restaurant as a casual afternoon investment. Maybe there's an explanation, Elena suggests weakly, though she's also staring at the screen with recognition and concern. What explanation justifies lying about your identity for 3 months? What explanation makes it acceptable to let someone fall in love with a person who doesn't exist? The words hang in the air between them. The first time Catalina has admitted aloud that her feelings for Jun have deepened into something that feels like love. But now that emotion is contaminated by the revelation that she's been loving a fictional character, a role played by someone whose real life exists in a completely different stratosphere. Her phone buzzes with a text message from the number June gave her for emergencies. Landing at LAX in 2 hours. Can't wait to see you. I have something important to discuss. June. The casual familiarity of his sign-off now feels like mockery. June, the humble business consultant who listens to her stories with respectful curiosity, doesn't exist. The man texting her is Kim Min-jun, a Korean billionaire who's been slumming in her world like some kind of cultural tourism experiment. I can't see him, Catalina says, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. I can't pretend to be surprised when he finally decides to reveal his truth, can't act grateful for his honesty when it comes after months of deception. So what will you do? Catalina looks around the restaurant that represents everything her family has built through honest work, authentic relationships, and transparent struggle. The photographs on the walls show 3 generations of Vega family celebrations, quinceañeras and weddings and baptisms, where food served as love made visible. This is her world, real, genuine, built on foundations that don't require deception to maintain. I'll go home early, she decides, untying her apron with hands that shake slightly. When he comes looking for me, tell him that Catalina had to leave unexpectedly. Don't tell him why. Don't give him my address. Don't help him contact me. Catalina, maybe you should talk to him first. Let him explain. Explain what? That a Korean billionaire thought it would be interesting to see how the other half lives? That he needed a cultural adventure to spice up his privileged existence? Catalina's voice rises with hurt and anger. I shared my grandmother's recipes with him, Elena. I told him about Papa's death, about the struggles we faced when the restaurant almost failed, about dreams I've never told anyone else. And the entire time, he was collecting experiences like souvenirs from a world he could walk away from whenever it became inconvenient. The pain in her voice makes Elena reach for her sister's hands, offering comfort in the face of betrayal that cuts deeper than simple romantic disappointment. This isn't just about a man lying about his job. It's about the violation of cultural trust, the weaponization of generous hospitality, the reduction of authentic human connection to entertainment for someone whose real life exists beyond economic consequences. I'm sorry, Hermana. I know how much this connection meant to you. I thought it meant something to him too. Catalina whispers, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I thought when he asked about family traditions and listened so carefully to our stories, he was honoring what we shared. I thought the way he helped with dishes and carried supplies meant he understood that love is demonstrated through actions, not just words. Maybe he does understand that. Maybe the person he was when he was here was real, even if the identity was false. But Catalina shakes her head, gathering her purse and keys with the decisive movement of someone who's made an irreversible decision. Rich men don't fall in love with poor women, Elena. They have adventures with them. They collect experiences and stories to make their real lives more interesting. When he goes back to his Korean billionaire existence, I'll become an anecdote about authentic ethnic cuisine and the charming local who taught him about mole poblano. The assessment is harsh, but rooted in experience and social reality. Catalina has seen enough movies, heard enough stories, witnessed enough cycles of wealthy men seeking temporary authenticity in working-class worlds to recognize the pattern. Lock up for me? She asks, kissing Elena's cheek. And if he asks, tell him Catalina wishes him well in his real life. She leaves through the back entrance, avoiding the front windows where Min Jun, will look for her when he arrives, expecting to find the woman who's been preserving his favorite table and making special desserts for a relationship she thought was becoming something precious. But 20 minutes later, as she sits in her small apartment staring at the business news coverage of Korean corporate drama, Catalina realizes that running away might protect her heart, but won't answer the questions that will haunt her if she doesn't face them directly. Did anything they shared over 3 months have genuine meaning? Was the man who asked respectful questions about her culture and listened to family stories with protective tenderness real? Or was he just another performance by someone skilled at manipulating people for desired outcomes? The phone buzzes again. At the restaurant. Elena says you left early. Are you okay? I'm worried. Please call me. The concern in his message sounds authentic, but Catalina no longer trusts her ability to distinguish between performed emotion and genuine feeling when it comes to Kim Min-jun's complicated double life. She turns off her phone and stares out her window at Los Angeles stretching toward the Pacific, wondering how many other women have discovered that the man they were falling in love with was actually someone else entirely, and whether any of those stories ended with explanations that justified the deception. But one floor above, watching the same city through a similar window, Min-jun sits in a hotel room staring at his phone and realizing that the corporate war he's been fighting in Seoul has just cost him something infinitely more valuable than any business empire. How do you explain yourself to someone who no longer believes you exist? The hotel suite Min-jun has occupied for the past week overlooks the same Los Angeles skyline that Catalina sees from her apartment, but the view might as well be from different planets. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the city in expensive glass, while room service menus offer cuisine from around the world at prices that exceed most people's weekly grocery budgets. He hasn't left the room in 3 days, existing on coffee and the kind of corporate-provided meals that sustain executives during crisis management. His laptop displays a constant stream of communications from Seoul. Board meetings he's missing, decisions being made without his input, Director Park's systematic dismantling of everything Min-jun built over 8 years of dedicated leadership. But none of those corporate disasters compare to the personal catastrophe of losing Catalina before he could explain himself. Her silence has stretched from hours to days, and each unanswered text message confirms his growing certainty that she knows the truth about his identity. Secretary Young knocks softly before entering, carrying yet another folder of documents that require immediate attention from Seoul's absent CEO. She sets the papers on his desk with professional efficiency, but her expression carries concern that goes beyond corporate obligations. "Sir, Director Park has scheduled another board vote for tomorrow. If you're not present to defend your position..." "He wins by default," Min-jun finishes wearily. "I understand the implications, Young. But there are some things more important than corporate politics." Young studies her boss with the insight earned through 5 years of managing his professional life. She's watched him transform from a cold, efficient executive into someone who laughs at inappropriate moments, asks personal questions about employee families, and demonstrates genuine curiosity about cultures beyond Korean business hierarchies. "This is about the woman from the restaurant, isn't it?" she asks gently. "The reason you've been traveling to LA, the source of your recent humanization." Min-jun looks up from his laptop, surprised by his assistant's perceptiveness. "You knew. I've been managing your schedule for half a decade, sir. When someone starts requesting frequent trips to the same city with minimal business justification and returns from those trips with dramatically improved mood and energy, the math isn't difficult. She discovered my real identity," he admits, his voice hollow with defeat. "Saw me on Korean business news, realized I've been lying to her for 3 months about who I am and what I represent. She won't take my calls, won't see me, won't give me the chance to explain why the deception felt necessary." Young sets down her folder and takes the unusual step of sitting across from her boss, treating this conversation as personal rather than professional for the first time in their working relationship. "May I ask what you were hoping to achieve? Why the false identity seemed preferable to honesty?" Min-jun considers the question, trying to articulate feelings that seem simultaneously obvious and completely irrational. "Have you ever met someone who made you want to be a better version of yourself? Someone whose presence revealed how much of your life has been performance rather than authenticity?" "Once," Young admits quietly. "My husband. When we met, I was so focused on corporate advancement that I'd forgotten how to have genuine conversations with people who couldn't help my career. Then you understand. With Catalina, I could be simply human. Not an heir, not a CEO, not a representative of family legacy or corporate obligations. She cared about my thoughts on food, culture, family relationships, things that have nothing to do with net worth or business achievement. But you didn't trust her enough to believe she might care about those things even if she knew about your wealth and position." The observation hits like a gentle slap. Min-jun realizes that his deception wasn't just about protecting the relationship. It was about protecting himself from the possibility that Catalina might reject him for what he represents, rather than embrace him for who he is beneath the corporate armor. "I was a coward," he acknowledges. "I convinced myself I was preserving something precious. But really, I was just avoiding the risk of authentic vulnerability." Jung's phone buzzes with an urgent message. She glances at it, and her expression immediately shifts from personal conversation to professional crisis management. "Sir, we have a problem. Director Park has leaked information about your relationship to Korean business media. They're running a story about the CEO's secret foreign girlfriend and questioning your judgment, stability, and fitness for leadership." Minjun's blood chills as he realizes the implications. Park hasn't just weaponized his feelings for Catalina within the boardroom. He's exposed their relationship to public scrutiny, turning private emotions into entertainment for business journalists and corporate gossips. How bad? Jung's expression answers before her words. Photographs, speculation about her immigration status, suggestions that you're being manipulated or blackmailed by a foreign national seeking access to Korean corporate secrets. They've turned your personal life into a national security concern. The betrayal feels complete. Minjun's attempt to protect Catalina through secrecy has instead exposed her to the kind of public attention that could destroy her business, her reputation, and her family's privacy. His deception has become a weapon that others are using to hurt the woman he was trying to shield. I have to warn her, he says, reaching for his phone. She needs to know what's coming, needs to prepare for media attention that could affect her restaurant and her family. Sir, Jung interrupts gently, perhaps it's time to consider a different approach. Instead of managing this crisis from a distance, why not return to Seoul and address the situation directly? Face the board, handle the media, take control of the narrative before it destroys everything you've worked to build. And leave her to deal with the consequences alone? Bring her with you. The suggestion hangs in the air like an impossible solution. Minjun stares at his assistant, wondering if corporate stress has finally driven him to hallucinations. What? If Director Park wants to make your relationship into a corporate issue, then make it a corporate asset, Jung explains, her voice gaining confidence as she develops the strategy. Introduce her properly. Let Seoul see who she really is rather than the caricature Park is trying to create. Show the board that your judgment hasn't been compromised. It's been refined by someone who values authenticity over appearances. She won't even take my phone calls. You're suggesting she'll agree to travel to Korea to face corporate scrutiny and media attention? I'm suggesting you stop trying to protect her from the truth and start trusting her to handle it. The woman who built a successful restaurant while preserving her family's cultural traditions isn't fragile. She's strong, intelligent, and capable of making her own decisions about what risks she's willing to take for relationships she values. Jung's assessment forces Minjun to confront his own patronizing assumptions. He's been treating Catalina like someone who needs protection, rather than someone who deserves honesty. His deception wasn't motivated by respect for her strength. It was motivated by fear of his own vulnerability. Even if she agreed to listen to my explanation, why would she want to involve herself in Korean corporate politics? Why would she risk her business and her family's privacy for a relationship that started with lies? Because, Jung says simply, maybe she fell in love with the real you, not the fictional identity you created. Maybe the man who showed genuine interest in her culture and asked respectful questions about her family was authentic, even if his name and occupation weren't. The possibility that Catalina might distinguish between his deception and his feelings offers hope that Minjun hasn't dared consider. But it also requires him to take the risk he's been avoiding for 3 months. Complete honesty, total vulnerability, the admission that he needs her more than he's ever needed anything in his carefully controlled life. His phone rings with Taejun's number, and Minjun answers immediately. Hyung, are you seeing the news coverage? His brother asks without preamble. They're destroying your reputation and hers simultaneously. This has gone beyond corporate politics into character assassination. I know. Jung just briefed me on the media strategy Park is using. Then you know you can't handle this from a distance. You need to come home, face the situation directly, and bring the woman with you. Let Seoul meet the person who's been making you human again. She won't see me, Taejun. She knows I lied about my identity. Why would she trust me with something this important when I couldn't trust her with basic honesty? Because she's not stupid, Hyung. She understands that wealthy men often hide their identity when they're trying to discover whether someone likes them for themselves or their money. The question isn't whether you lied. It's whether you're brave enough to tell the truth now and risk everything on her response. Through the hotel windows, Los Angeles spreads out like a circuit board of possibility and regret. Somewhere in that sprawling city, Catalina is probably reading the same news coverage, realizing that her attempt to avoid corporate drama has instead placed her at its center. What if she says no? What if she's decided that a relationship built on deception isn't worth salvaging? Then you'll know where you stand, and you can make decisions based on reality instead of fear, Taejun replies. But if you don't ask, if you let Park's manipulation destroy something precious without fighting for it, then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been possible if you'd chosen courage over cowardice. Minjun stares at his reflection in the hotel window, seeing not the polished CEO or the disguised businessman, but someone caught between identities, between worlds, between the safety of deception and the terrifying possibility of authentic love. I need to see her, he decides suddenly. Not to explain or justify or ask for forgiveness, but to tell her the complete truth and let her decide what she wants to do with it. Now you're thinking like the man who deserves her, Taejun says with obvious relief. Want some backup? Elena and I could provide moral support, cultural translation if needed. Elena? Minjun's surprise is audible. My wife, Hyung, Catalina's sister. The one who's been watching you two dance around each other for months, hoping you'd both find the courage to be honest about your feelings. The revelation hits Minjun like a physical blow. Taejun married Catalina's sister, which means his brother has been part of the Vega family circle, which means the coincidental meeting at La Cocina de Abuela wasn't coincidental at all. You orchestrated our meeting? I suggested a restaurant. You chose to go back 15 times and fall in love with the chef. Big difference. Does she know? Does Catalina know that you and Elena planned our introduction? Elena mentioned you to her sister, said there was a Korean man who seemed genuinely interested in learning about Mexican culture, rather than collecting ethnic experiences. But Catalina doesn't know about the family connection. We thought it was better to let whatever happened between you develop naturally. Minjun processes this information, realizing that his relationship with Catalina has been surrounded by protective family observation from the beginning. Elena and Taejun have been watching their respective siblings navigate cross-cultural romance while managing their own intercultural marriage. I don't know what to say to her, he admits. How do you apologize for 3 months of fundamental dishonesty without making excuses or asking for forgiveness you don't deserve? You start by acknowledging that she had the right to know who she was falling in love with, Taejun suggests. You admit that your deception was about your fear, not her trustworthiness. And then you offer her the choice, complete truth about your life, your world, your obligations, and let her decide whether she wants to be part of it. And if she chooses not to? If she decides that Korean corporate culture and Chaebol family expectations are incompatible with the life she wants to build? Then you'll have to decide what matters more to you. Maintaining the corporate identity that's never made you genuinely happy, or choosing the woman who showed you what authentic connection feels like. The ultimatum is clear. Minjun can continue living the divided existence that's protected him from vulnerability, or he can risk everything on the possibility that love might be worth more than legacy. I'm going to her apartment, he decides. Tonight. No more phones, no more messages, no more hiding behind corporate crisis management. Face to face, complete honesty, whatever consequences follow. Good. Elena and I will be nearby if you need backup, but this conversation needs to happen between the two of you. No mediators, no family interference, just the truth about who you are and what you want. After ending the call, Minjun stares at his reflection in the bathroom mirror as he prepares to leave the hotel. The man looking back at him isn't the perfectly groomed CEO or the carefully disguised businessman. He's someone who's about to risk everything on the hope that authentic love might be possible between two people from completely different worlds. He puts on simple clothes, jeans and a plain shirt, and leaves his platinum cufflinks on the dresser. Tonight, he goes to Catalina not as Kim Min-jun the billionaire or Jun the mysterious consultant, but as a man who's finally ready to offer the one thing he's been withholding: the complete truth about who he is and why he fell in love with her. But as his car navigates through Los Angeles traffic toward Catalina's neighborhood, Minjun doesn't know that she's spent the past 3 days researching Korean business culture, Chaebol family dynamics, and the impossible social distances that separate people like him from people like her, and that she's reached some devastating conclusions about their chances for a genuine future together. Sometimes the hardest conversations happen when both people are finally ready to tell the truth, but their truths lead to completely different conclusions about what's possible. Director Park Sang-woo sits behind his mahogany desk in Mintech Corporation's executive suite. Seoul's skyline glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows like scattered diamonds on black velvet. 3 manila folders spread before him contain the final components of his strategy to destroy Kim Min-jun's career. And each document represents months of careful surveillance, strategic manipulation, and calculated betrayal. The first folder holds financial records showing Min-jun's unusual travel patterns and questionable expense allocations related to his frequent Los Angeles trips. Park has crafted these normal business expenses into evidence of corporate resource mismanagement, personal indulgence at company cost, and compromised professional judgment. The second folder contains surveillance photographs and private investigator reports detailing every interaction between Min-jun and Catalina Vega over the past 3 months. Park's team has documented their dinners, photographed their growing intimacy, and constructed a narrative that portrays the relationship as either naive exploitation or deliberate corporate security risk. The third folder represents Park's masterpiece, a detailed psychological profile prepared by a corporate consulting firm, analyzing Min-jun's recent behavioral changes and concluding that the CEO has become emotionally unstable, professionally unreliable, and susceptible to foreign manipulation due to his involvement with an economically disadvantaged immigrant woman of questionable motives. "Secretary Kim," Park calls to his assistant, his voice carrying the satisfied tone of a predator who's cornered his prey. "Please confirm that all board members have received copies of our comprehensive leadership assessment regarding CEO Kim Min-jun." "Yes, Director Park Nim. All materials were distributed this morning, along with your recommendation for emergency leadership transition to protect corporate stability and shareholder confidence." Park's smile could freeze champagne. He spent 18 months constructing this moment. Every board meeting where he questioned Min-jun's judgment, every casual comment about the CEO's mysterious personal activities, every strategic suggestion that Mintech needed more experienced, stable leadership for upcoming global expansion. His phone buzzes with a call from board chairman Lee Dong-wook, exactly as Park anticipated. "Chairman Lee," Park answers with perfectly calibrated concern. "I assume you've reviewed the materials regarding our current leadership situation?" "Disturbing doesn't begin to describe it," Chairman Lee responds, his voice tight with corporate anxiety. "A Korean CEO secretly involved with a foreign national while making erratic business decisions? The potential for blackmail, industrial espionage, or simple professional incompetence is staggering." "My thoughts exactly, Chairman. Which is why I've taken the liberty of preparing a comprehensive transition plan. If the board moves quickly, we can manage this crisis quietly, preserve corporate reputation, and ensure continued stability for our shareholders and employees." Park opens his laptop, where a PowerPoint presentation titled Leadership Succession Strategy details his carefully orchestrated corporate coup. Every slide has been designed to make his ascension to CEO appear inevitable, necessary, and in the company's best interests. What about Kim Min-jun himself? Will he cooperate with a voluntary resignation, or should we prepare for a hostile leadership challenge? That depends entirely on how much he values the woman's safety and privacy, Park replies, his tone carrying implications that make Chairman Lee's breath catch audibly. Public board disputes have a way of exposing personal details that might prove embarrassing or even dangerous for civilian family members who never asked to be part of corporate politics. The threat is clear without being explicit. Park will destroy Catalina Vega's reputation, business, and personal safety if Min-jun fights the leadership transition. He's weaponized the CEO's feelings, turning love into leverage for corporate control. "You're suggesting blackmail?" "I'm suggesting reality," Park corrects smoothly. Korean business operates on certain principles: family honor, social stability, appropriate cultural boundaries. When a chaebol heir abandons those principles for personal indulgence, consequences naturally follow. I'm simply facilitating those natural consequences to protect everyone involved. Chairman Lee's silence stretches for long moments as he processes the implications. Park has constructed a perfect trap, Min-jun can fight to retain his position and watch Catalina become collateral damage in a media war, or he can surrender corporate control to protect the woman he loves from public destruction. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m., Park continues, pressing his advantage. I've prepared statements for the media, transition documents for shareholders, and comprehensive plans for managing any personal complications that might arise during the leadership change. And if Kim Min-jun refuses to cooperate? Park's smile becomes predatory. Then the Korean business community will witness exactly what happens to executives who prioritize foreign romantic entanglements over family responsibility and corporate duty. The lesson will be educational for future leaders who might consider similar indiscretions. After ending the call, Park turns to the city view beyond his windows, imagining the corner office that will soon be his, the CEO suite that represents not just corporate power, but victory over the privileged heir who never earned his position through struggle or sacrifice. His intercom buzzes with his assistant's voice. Director Park Nim, you have a visitor. Kim Tae-jun is here without an appointment, says it's urgent family business regarding his brother. Park's expression sharpens with interest. Min-jun's younger brother, the artistic black sheep who rejected corporate succession to pursue photography, represents either an unexpected complication or an additional opportunity to damage the Kim family's business reputation. Send him in. Tae-jun enters Park's office with the casual confidence of someone who's never been intimidated by corporate hierarchy. His vintage leather jacket and camera equipment look deliberately out of place in the formal executive environment, a visual reminder that not everyone in the Kim family has embraced traditional chaebol values. Director Park, Tae-jun greets him without honorific titles, a breach of business etiquette that makes Park's jaw tighten involuntarily. I understand you've been busy destroying my brother's career while he's been discovering what happiness looks like. Your brother has been compromising his professional responsibilities for personal indulgence. Park responds coldly. The board has legitimate concerns about leadership stability and judgment reliability. The board has legitimate concerns about you manufacturing crises to justify a corporate coup, Tae-jun counters, settling into the visitor's chair without invitation. Interesting timing, isn't it? My brother finds genuine happiness with someone who makes him a better man, and suddenly his corporate competence becomes questionable. Park studies Tae-jun carefully, recognizing dangerous intelligence behind the young man's casual demeanor. The artistic brother might be more strategically minded than his bohemian appearance suggests. Your brother's private affairs are his own business until they affect corporate performance and shareholder confidence. Unfortunately, his recent behavior demonstrates compromised judgment that threatens company stability. His recent behavior demonstrates human growth that threatens your ambition, Tae-jun corrects. Min-jun has been happier, more creative, more genuinely engaged with leadership responsibilities than he's been in years. The only people threatened by his personal development are those who preferred him isolated, controlled, and dependent on corporate validation for self-worth. The assessment hits uncomfortably close to truth. Park has relied on Min-jun's emotional isolation to maintain influence over corporate decision-making. A CEO who finds personal fulfillment outside the company becomes significantly harder to manipulate or control. You seem unusually informed about your brother's romantic situation, Park observes. Perhaps you could shed light on the appropriateness of a Korean business leader's involvement with a foreign service worker of questionable background and uncertain motives. Tae-jun's expression turns dangerous. Her name is Catalina Vega. She's a professional chef who owns a successful restaurant, preserves her family's cultural traditions, and has shown my brother what authentic connection feels like after years of corporate performance. If you've investigated her background, you know she's hardworking, honest, and legally documented. The only thing questionable about her is why she fell in love with someone from our world. Our world? The world of inherited privilege, manufactured importance, and emotional isolation disguised as family honor, Tae-jun explains with cutting accuracy. She comes from a world where people work for what they have, where family relationships are built on genuine affection rather than social obligation, where success is measured by community contribution rather than accumulated wealth. Park realizes that Tae-jun isn't just defending his brother. He's articulating a critique of Korean chaebol culture that could resonate dangerously with board members already concerned about public perception and social responsibility. Your brother's cultural curiosities are irrelevant to his professional competence and corporate leadership capacity. Are they? Taejun leans forward, his casual manner sharpening into focused intensity. Because the employees I've talked to say Min-jun has been more approachable, more innovative, more genuinely concerned about workplace culture since he started learning about authentic community building from Catalina's family. Productivity is up, employee satisfaction has improved, and creative problem-solving has increased across multiple departments. The information hits Park like cold water. He's been so focused on constructing Min-jun's romantic relationship as evidence of compromised judgment that he hasn't considered the possibility that personal happiness might actually improve professional performance. Even if that were true, Park responds carefully, the optics of a Korean CEO's involvement with a foreign woman create liability issues, potential security concerns, and cultural complications that could affect business relationships throughout Asia. The optics of a Korean CEO learning from other cultures, embracing diversity, and demonstrating that success doesn't require emotional isolation could position Mintech as a forward-thinking company that attracts international talent and global partnerships, Taejun counters. Unless, of course, the goal is to maintain traditional barriers that keep certain people in power regardless of their actual leadership capacity. The accusation hangs in the air like a challenge. Park realizes that this conversation has evolved from family defense into corporate strategy debate, with implications that extend far beyond Min-jun's personal life. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that you reconsider your assessment of my brother's relationship as a corporate liability. Instead of weaponizing his happiness, consider the possibility that a CEO who's learned to value authentic human connection might be exactly what Mintech needs for sustainable long-term growth in an increasingly interconnected global economy. Park stares at Taejun, recognizing the strategic intelligence that makes this conversation far more dangerous than simple family loyalty. The younger Kim brother has reframed the entire narrative, transforming Park's attack into a debate about corporate culture, leadership philosophy, and competitive advantage in modern business. And if I refuse to reconsider? If I proceed with the board's assessment of your brother's compromised judgment and recommend leadership transition for corporate stability? Taejun's smile becomes predatory in a way that reminds Park exactly whose family he's been attempting to destroy. Then you'll discover that the Kim family has resources beyond corporate titles and business influence. Some battles are worth fighting regardless of the cost, and my brother has finally found something worth fighting for. The threat is subtle but unmistakable. Park has been treating this as a corporate chess game where he controls most of the pieces, but Taejun's presence suggests that the Kim family has strategies, connections, and leverage that Park hasn't anticipated. After Taejun leaves, Park sits alone in his office, staring at the folders that contain his carefully constructed case against Min-jun's leadership. For the first time since beginning this corporate coup, he wonders whether he's underestimated not just his target's resources, but the possibility that public opinion might favor a CEO who chooses authentic love over traditional isolation. But it's too late to reconsider strategy. The board meeting is scheduled, the media narrative is prepared, and Park's entire career now depends on successfully destroying Kim Min-jun's reputation before the younger generation of Korean business leaders decides that happiness might be more valuable than hereditary power. The war for Mintech Corporation is about to begin, and the stakes have just become much higher than simple corporate control. But 3,000 miles away, Min-jun stands outside Catalina's apartment building, holding his breath in his heart, as he prepares to risk everything on a conversation that will determine whether love can survive the collision of two completely different worlds. Some battles determine who wins power, others determine whether power is worth winning at all. And Catalina's apartment complex in Boyle Heights looks nothing like the glass towers and manicured landscapes that have defined Min-jun's adult life. Two-story stucco buildings painted in warm earth tones cluster around a central courtyard, where children's bicycles lean against flowering bougainvillea, and the sound of Spanish conversations mingles with music from open windows. He stands at the entrance for long minutes, designer shoes on cracked concrete, trying to gather courage that feels more elusive than any boardroom negotiation he's ever navigated. Through Catalina's second-floor window, he can see warm light and moving shadows that suggest she's home. But knowing she's there and finding the words to explain 3 months of deception feel like completely different challenges. His phone buzzes with another urgent message from Seoul. Emergency board meeting moved to 8 a.m. your time tomorrow. Park has votes to remove you as CEO. Need immediate response regarding your position. Young. The corporate crisis that seemed overwhelming just hours ago now feels distant compared to the personal reckoning waiting behind Catalina's door. Minjun turns off his phone and starts climbing the exterior stairs, each step carrying him further from the safety of electronic communication and closer to the terrifying possibility of face-to-face honesty. But when he reaches her door, the sound of laughter and music from inside stops him cold. Through the thin walls, he can hear multiple voices speaking rapid Spanish, the clink of glasses, and what sounds like a family celebration in full swing. Of course, he thinks with bitter irony. The night I finally decide to tell her the truth, she's hosting a party. He's about to turn away when the door opens and Elena appears, carrying empty bottles toward the recycling bin. She spots him immediately, and her expression shifts from surprise to something that might be sympathy. Jun, she says quietly, using the name he's been hiding behind for months. Or should I say, Minjun? The gentle correction confirms his worst fears. She told you. She figured it out from the news coverage. Korean business media isn't subtle when they want to destroy someone's reputation. Elena sets down the bottles and studies his face with protective sister assessment. The question is, what are you doing here? If you came to explain or apologize or ask for forgiveness, you should know that my sister has spent 3 days researching your world and reaching some painful conclusions about where she fits in it. I came to tell her the truth. All of it. Who I am, why I lied, what I want, and why I think I fell in love with her before I even understood what that meant. Elena's expression softens slightly at his honesty. She's not alone in there, you know. It's Abuela Rosa's 85th birthday party. Our grandmother flew in from Mexico City this morning. The entire family is here, plus half the neighborhood. It's not exactly the setting for private emotional confessions. The timing feels like cosmic punishment for his months of deception. The night he finally finds courage to be vulnerable, Catalina is surrounded by the family and community that represent everything authentic he's been pretending to understand. I should go, he says, already turning toward the stairs. This isn't the right time, and she shouldn't have to deal with my drama during her grandmother's celebration. Wait. Elena's voice stops him. Maybe it's exactly the right time. Maybe she needs to see who you really are when you're not performing, not trying to control the narrative, just honestly present for something that matters to her. I'll ruin her grandmother's party. A Korean billionaire showing up uninvited to a Mexican family celebration? That's not cultural bridge building. That's privileged intrusion. Yan or, Elena suggests with a slight smile. It's a man who's finally ready to stop hiding from the woman he loves, even if that means being uncomfortable, out of place, and completely vulnerable in front of people who have every reason to judge him. Before Minjun can respond, the door opens wider, and an elderly woman with silver hair and knowing eyes appears beside Elena. Her presence carries the kind of authority that comes from decades of making family decisions, and Minjun instinctively straightens under her assessment. Abuela Rosa, Elena says in Spanish, then switches to English. This is Jun, Minjun, the man Catalina has been. The man who makes my granddaughter smile like she did when she was 12 and discovered she could make perfect tortillas, the grandmother interrupts, also in accented English. Her voice carries warmth and steel in equal measure. The man who has been learning our recipes and asking respectful questions about our traditions. Minjun realizes he's being evaluated by someone whose opinion might matter more to Catalina than any corporate board or media assessment. Senora, I'm sorry for intruding on your birthday celebration. I didn't know about the party, and I don't want to disturb your family time. Mijo, Rosa says, using an endearment that surprises him with its gentleness. Do you know what I told my granddaughter 3 days ago when she was crying about a businessman who lied about his name, but told the truth about his heart? Minjun shakes his head, afraid to hope that Catalina's tears might indicate something other than dismissive anger. I told her that a man's name tells you who his family thinks he should be. But a man's actions when he thinks no one important is watching? That tells you who he really is. Rosa studies his face with the intensity of someone who spent 8 decades reading human character. You helped my granddaughter carry restaurant supplies. You washed dishes after closing time. You listened to family stories like they were precious gifts instead of ethnic entertainment. That man, the one who showed up consistently, respectfully, generously, that man is real, yes? Yes, Minjun admits, his voice barely above a whisper. That man is more real than I've been in years of corporate performance. Then come inside, Rosa decides. Meet the family that raised the woman you love. Let us see if the Korean businessman can be as respectful and generous as the humble consultant who earned our Catalina's trust. Elena opens the door wider, and sound washes over Minjun like a warm wave. Mariachi music from someone's phone, children laughing in both English and Spanish, adults sharing stories that punctuate laughter with gentle teasing. The apartment, which probably could fit inside his sole penthouse bathroom, somehow contains what looks like 30 people in various stages of celebration. Elena, who's at the door? Calls a voice from inside, and Minjun's heart stops as he recognizes Catalina's tone, warm with family joy, but carrying undertones of exhaustion that suggests the past few days have been as difficult for her as for him. Someone who wants to meet Abuela Rosa properly, Elena calls back, and maybe apologize for not introducing himself correctly the first time. A moment of silence, then footsteps approaching. Catalina appears in the doorway wearing a traditional Mexican dress in deep blue embroidered with golden flowers, her hair loose around her shoulders, looking more beautiful than memory could contain. But when she sees Minjun, her expression shudders with hurt and protective distance. Jun, she says carefully, then corrects herself. Minjun, you shouldn't be here. I know, but I needed to tell you the truth, and I was afraid if I waited another day, another hour, I might lose the courage entirely. The truth? Catalina's voice carries 3 days of accumulated pain. The truth is that a Korean billionaire thought it would be interesting to play pretend with a Mexican chef. The truth is that you collected cultural experiences like souvenirs, while I fell in love with someone who doesn't exist. The truth, Minjun says quietly, is that I've been living a lie for so long that I forgot what authentic connection felt like until I met you. The truth is that I lied about my name and my job because I was terrified you'd reject me for representing everything about wealth and privilege that creates barriers between people instead of bridges. Rosa watches this exchange with shrewd assessment, then makes a decision that surprises everyone. Catalina, invite your young man inside. Let the family meet him properly. If he's going to break your heart, better we know his character first. If he's going to heal it, better he understands what he's asking to be part of. Abuela, mija, 3 days you've been researching his world, analyzing the distance between Korean corporate culture and Mexican family values, convincing yourself that love can't survive cultural differences. Tonight, let him research our world. Let him discover what he'd be choosing if he chooses you. The challenge is clear. Rosa is offering Minjun the opportunity to prove his sincerity by subjecting himself to authentic family scrutiny, real cultural immersion, the kind of genuine vulnerability he's been avoiding through months of careful deception. I don't want to intrude on your birthday celebration, Minjun says to Rosa. This is your special day, your family time. Mijo, I'm 85 years old. I've had 84 previous birthdays, but I may not have many more chances to meet the man who taught my granddaughter that Korean businessmen can ask respectful questions about mole poblano. Rosa's smile becomes mischievous. Besides, what's a Mexican birthday party without at least one uncomfortable conversation that ends in either tears or dancing? Despite her emotional turmoil, Catalina almost smiles at her grandmother's assessment. The reaction gives Min-jun hope that beneath the hurt and disappointment, something of their connection might survive complete honesty. Okay, Catalina decides. Come inside. Meet my family. Let them see who Kim Min-jun really is when he's not performing for business consultants or Mexican chefs who don't know any better. Min-jun steps across the threshold into a world that operates on completely different principles than any environment he's ever navigated. The apartment is small, crowded, filled with mismatched furniture and family photographs spanning decades. Children weave between adults' conversations, food covers every available surface, and the warmth of genuine human connection fills space that expensive interior design could never create. "Everyone!" Rosa calls out, her voice carrying the authority that makes 30 people pause their separate conversations. "I want you to meet Min-jun, the Korean businessman who's been learning about our family recipes and falling in love with our Catalina." The introduction creates a moment of silence, as every person in the room turns to assess the unexpected guest. Min-jun sees curiosity, protective concern, and frank evaluation in faces ranging from children to elderly relatives. He's never been scrutinized by so many people who have no reason to treat him with corporate deference or social politeness. "Annyeonghaseyo," he says, offering a formal Korean bow that feels ridiculous and necessary simultaneously. "Thank you for welcoming me into your family celebration. I'm honored to meet Senora Rosa on her special day, and I apologize for not introducing myself properly to your family before now." A teenage cousin whispers loudly to her mother, "He's really tall for Korean, no?" which makes several adults laugh and breaks some of the tension. Min-jun finds himself smiling despite his nervousness. This is authentic human reaction, unfiltered by social expectations or corporate protocol. "So you're the mysterious businessman," says a man who looks like Catalina's father, stepping forward with protective assessment. "I'm Carlos, Catalina's uncle. Elena tells us you've been learning about Mexican food traditions. What's your favorite dish that my niece has taught you?" The question is clearly a test. Min-jun realizes that his answer will be evaluated not just for cultural knowledge, but for evidence that he's been paying genuine attention to Catalina's teaching, rather than simply consuming ethnic entertainment. "Chiles en nogada," he answers without hesitation. Not because it's the most complex or the most famous, but because when Catalina explained its history, how it was created to celebrate Mexico's independence, how the colors represent the flag, how her grandmother's version includes ingredients that tell the story of her family's journey from Guadalajara to Los Angeles, I realized that food can be a form of cultural storytelling that preserves memory across generations. The room falls quiet as people process this response. Min-jun has demonstrated not just factual knowledge, but emotional understanding of why family recipes matter beyond their flavors. Carlos nods slowly, then extends his hand. "Any man who listens that carefully to my niece's stories is welcome at our table." The question is, are you ready to learn what happens when 30 Mexicans decide to test a Korean billionaire's cultural sensitivity? As hands reach out to shake his, as voices begin asking questions in both languages, as children start showing him family photographs and elderly relatives begin sharing their own immigration stories, Min-jun realizes that he's stepped into the most important examination of his life. But across the room, Catalina watches with conflicted emotions as her family begins to embrace the man who spent 3 months lying to her about his identity, wondering whether acceptance from her loved ones makes his deception better or worse, and whether her heart can survive the answer. The real test isn't whether Min-jun can charm her family. It's whether he can prove that the man they're meeting tonight is the same man she fell in love with, just with a different name and a more complicated world waiting outside her apartment door. Some cultural bridges are built through recipes and respectful questions, but others require the courage to be completely honest about who you are and what you're afraid of losing. The flight from LAX to Incheon International Airport stretches 13 hours across the Pacific, giving Min-jun and Catalina ample time to prepare for the corporate and media storm awaiting them in Seoul. In the first-class cabin's privacy, surrounded by the kind of luxury that still feels surreal to Catalina despite 3 days of intensive cultural preparation, they review the strategy Taejun and Elena have helped them develop. Catalina studies Korean business etiquette guides on her tablet, practicing the formal bows and honorific language that will demonstrate respect for Korean corporate culture without compromising her authentic personality. Minjun watches her preparation with growing admiration for her courage and determination to succeed in a world that's designed to intimidate outsiders. The media will ask about our first meeting, Minjun warns, reviewing the list of probable questions Secretary Jung has prepared. They'll want details about how we met, how long we've been together, what your intentions are regarding Korea and our relationship. And they'll be looking for evidence that I'm a gold digger or a manipulator, Catalina adds with remarkable composure. Elena showed me some of the Korean news coverage. I understand what we're facing. Her calm acceptance of the challenges ahead impresses Minjun more than any corporate negotiation skill he's ever witnessed. Catalina has spent the past 3 days learning not just Korean customs and basic phrases, but the complex dynamics of Korean business politics, the media's role in corporate succession battles, and the specific accusations Director Park has been making about their relationship. There's something else, Minjun says quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a confession he's been avoiding. Something I did that you need to know about before we land in Seoul, because Director Park will use it against us if he discovers it first. Catalina looks up from her language studies, her expression alert to the serious tone that's entered their conversation. Your grandmother's medical bills in Mexico, Minjun continues, forcing himself to maintain eye contact despite his discomfort. The surgery she needed 2 months ago, the treatments that your family couldn't afford. I paid for them. The admission hangs between them in the cabin's recycled air, and Minjun watches Catalina's face cycle through surprise, confusion, hurt, and anger as she processes the implications of his revelation. You what? Her voice is carefully controlled, but Minjun recognizes the dangerously quiet tone that preceded their most difficult conversations. I discovered the financial situation through investigation that I shouldn't have authorized. When I learned that your family was struggling with medical expenses, I arranged for anonymous payment through a medical charity foundation. Your grandmother received the treatment she needed, but you were never supposed to know it came from me. You investigated my family's finances? Catalina's composure cracks slightly, revealing the hurt and violation underneath. You had people looking into our personal business without permission? Not initially. But when Director Park began his campaign against me, I had to understand what weapons he might use against us. The financial investigation revealed your family's medical crisis, and I couldn't let your grandmother suffer when I had the resources to help. The explanation sounds rationalized even to Minjun's own ears, and he realizes that his good intentions don't erase the fundamental violation of privacy involved in investigating Catalina's family without her knowledge or consent. So for 2 months, while I've been working extra shifts and sending money to Mexico, while my family has been grateful for mysterious charitable assistance, you knew exactly what was happening and chose not to tell me? I thought it would be better if you made decisions about my family's life without consulting me, Catalina interrupts, her voice rising despite their public location. If you played God with our financial crisis, while I worried about my grandmother's medical care. The confrontation attracts attention from other first-class passengers, but Minjun realizes this conversation can't wait until they reach Seoul. The medical bill revelation represents exactly the kind of issue Director Park will weaponize. Evidence of Minjun using his wealth to manipulate Catalina's family circumstances. Proof of the economic inequality that makes genuine relationship equality impossible. You're right to be angry, Minjun acknowledges. I violated your privacy and your family's dignity by making decisions without consulting you. But Catalina, if your grandmother needed surgery and I had the ability to provide it, how could I stand by and do nothing? By talking to me. The words come out louder than intended, drawing disapproving glances from nearby passengers. Catalina lowers her voice but maintains her intensity. By respecting me enough to believe I could handle the truth about your wealth and your desire to help. By treating me like an equal partner instead of a charity case you needed to manage. The assessment hits Minjun like a physical blow because it accurately diagnoses the patronizing assumptions that have guided his behavior since their first meeting. Even when he thought he was protecting her, even when his intentions were generous, he was making unilateral decisions based on the belief that Catalina couldn't handle the complexity of his real life. Director Park knows about the medical payments, Min-jun admits quietly. He's going to use them as evidence that I've been financially manipulating your family to secure your loyalty. The anonymous charity foundation can be traced back to my personal accounts if anyone investigates thoroughly enough. Catalina stares out the airplane window at the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly below them, processing not just the betrayal of trust, but the strategic implications for the corporate battle they're flying toward. So when we land in Seoul, I'll be facing questions not just about being your girlfriend, but about whether my family and I are essentially being bribed to support your career interests. That's how it will look, Catalina interrupts with devastating clarity. My grandmother's medical crisis becomes evidence of financial desperation that made me vulnerable to manipulation by a wealthy man. Your assistance becomes proof of calculated generosity designed to create dependency and loyalty. The analysis demonstrates Catalina's sophisticated understanding of how their personal relationship will be transformed into political ammunition by Director Park and his media allies. She's not just angry about the violation of privacy. She's recognizing how Min-jun's secrecy has provided their enemies with powerful weapons. What do you want me to do? Min-jun asks. We can turn around, go back to LA, avoid the entire situation. I can resign from Mintech, find a different way to build a life that doesn't expose you to this kind of scrutiny and manipulation. And let Director Park win? Let him destroy everything you've built because you fell in love with someone from a different world? Catalina shakes her head firmly. No. We continue to Seoul, we face the board and the media, and we tell the truth. All of it, including the parts that make us both look complicated and human. Her decision surprises Min-jun with its courage and strategic thinking. Instead of retreating from the battle, Catalina is choosing to engage with it directly, to control the narrative by providing complete honesty rather than allowing their enemies to reveal partial truths designed to cause maximum damage. The medical payment issue gives us an opportunity, she continues, her voice gaining confidence as she develops the strategy. We can use it to demonstrate that our relationship has been built on genuine care rather than superficial attraction. You helped my family not to manipulate me, but because you couldn't bear to see people you care about suffering when you had the resources to help. And if they don't believe that explanation? If they assume the worst about both our motivations? Catalina turns from the window to meet his eyes directly, her expression carrying the same determination that's built her restaurant business and supported her family through financial crisis. Then we'll discover whether Korean society is ready for a love story that crosses cultural and economic boundaries without apology. Either they'll accept us as we are, or they won't. But we'll face that judgment with complete honesty, instead of the careful deceptions that got us into this situation. Her courage humbles Min-jun and forces him to recognize that Catalina possesses exactly the kind of strength and integrity required to survive Korean corporate politics. She's not seeking protection from the battle. She's preparing to fight it with weapons of authenticity and transparent emotion that might prove more powerful than Director Park's manipulation and fear-mongering. I love you, he says suddenly, the words escaping before he can consider their timing or appropriateness. I love you too, Catalina replies without hesitation. That's why we're doing this. Not to save your career or prove something to Korean society, but because love requires courage to defend itself against people who profit from cynicism and fear. As their flight begins its descent towards Seoul, Min-jun realizes that the woman beside him possesses exactly the qualities Korean culture claims to value: loyalty, family devotion, respect for tradition, willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for larger principles. The challenge will be helping Korean society recognize those qualities in someone whose cultural expression differs from their familiar forms. But Director Park waits in Seoul with ammunition that could destroy their relationship regardless of its authentic foundation. And the next 48 hours will determine whether love built on cultural respect and genuine connection can survive corporate warfare designed to transform private emotions into public scandals. The plane touches down at Incheon under gray December skies, carrying two people whose relationship is about to become a test case for whether authentic love can triumph over calculated manipulation in the glass towers of Korean corporate power. What happens when private truth meets public scrutiny in a culture that values harmony above individual happiness? The VIP lounge at Incheon International Airport feels like a fishbowl under siege as Minjun and Catalina wait for their connecting transportation to Seoul proper. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, they can see clusters of business journalists and photographers positioned strategically around every possible exit route, their cameras and recording equipment creating a gauntlet that must be navigated before reaching the relative safety of Minjun's Seoul residence. Secretary Young approaches with the controlled urgency that's defined her professional demeanor since the crisis began, carrying tablets displaying real-time social media coverage of their arrival and the Korean public's rapidly evolving reaction to seeing Catalina in person for the first time. The response is complex, Young reports diplomatically. Korean netizens are divided between fascination with your girlfriend's beauty and concern about cultural compatibility. The business press is focused on tomorrow's board meeting and speculation about your resignation. Minjun reviews the social media screenshots, noting the mixture of admiration and skepticism that greets photographs of Catalina navigating Korean cultural protocols with obvious preparation and respect. Her careful bows to airport officials, her attempts to use basic Korean phrases, and her traditional but elegant dress choices have impressed some observers, while others question the authenticity of her cultural adaptation. What about Director Park's media strategy? Catalina asks, demonstrating the political awareness she's developed over the past week of intensive preparation. He's emphasizing economic disparity and cultural incompatibility, Jung explains. The narrative suggests that your relationship represents a fundamental mismatch that threatens corporate stability. However, some younger Koreans are responding positively to what they see as a romantic story about love transcending social boundaries. The generational divide in public opinion reflects broader changes in Korean society, where younger citizens increasingly challenge traditional expectations about appropriate relationships for business leaders, while older generations maintain conservative views about cultural mixing and economic equality. Sir, Jung continues, there's been an unexpected development. Your parents have issued a public statement expressing their desire to meet Ms. Vega formally before tomorrow's board meeting. They've invited both of you to dinner tonight at the family residence. The announcement hits Minjun like cold water. His parents, traditional Korean business aristocracy who've spent 32 years grooming him for corporate leadership, have never shown interest in his personal relationships beyond their potential impact on family reputation and business alliances. Their sudden desire to meet Catalina suggests either genuine curiosity or strategic evaluation designed to determine her suitability as a daughter-in-law. That's unexpected, Minjun manages, trying to process the implications of introducing Catalina to parents whose approval he spent his adult life seeking despite disagreeing with many of their values. It could be an opportunity, Catalina observes with the cultural intelligence she's been demonstrating since agreeing to face Korean scrutiny. If your parents publicly support our relationship, it undermines Director Park's argument that I represent a threat to family honor and business stability. Her strategic thinking impresses Jung, who nods approvingly. Ms. Vega is correct. Parental endorsement would significantly complicate Director Park's narrative and provide political cover for board members who might otherwise feel pressured to vote against you. The drive from Incheon to Seoul provides Minjun and Catalina with their first direct experience of Korean public reaction to their relationship. At traffic lights, pedestrians and other drivers peer into their vehicle with obvious curiosity, some taking photographs, while others engage in animated discussions about the foreign woman who's captured their most eligible bachelor's heart. They're treating us like entertainment, Catalina observes without judgment, simply noting the reality of their sudden celebrity status. In Korean culture, successful men's personal lives often become public property, Minjun explains. Your choices reflect on family honor, corporate reputation, and social stability. Privacy becomes a luxury that wealth and power paradoxically eliminate. Similar to Mexican culture in some ways, Catalina replies thoughtfully. Family decisions get made collectively, and individual choices are evaluated based on their impact on extended family welfare. The difference is that Mexican family interference comes from love rather than social obligation. The comparison highlights the cultural bridges that have made their relationship possible, despite obvious differences in background and economic circumstances. Both societies value family loyalty, respect for tradition, and collective welfare over individual preferences. But they express these values through different mechanisms and expectations. The Kim family residence in Gangnam represents everything about inherited Korean wealth that Min-jun has spent his adult life simultaneously embodying and questioning. The traditional Hanok architecture speaks to cultural preservation, while the modern security systems and imported luxury furnishings demonstrate global sophistication and economic power. Min-jun's mother, Kim Seon-hwa, greets them at the entrance with the formal grace that's defined her role as Korea's business aristocracy matriarch for 3 decades. Her evaluation of Catalina begins immediately, noting posture, dress choices, language attempts, and cultural behavior with the practiced eye of someone who spent decades managing social and business relationships. "Welcome to our home," she addresses Catalina in carefully pronounced English, demonstrating respect for the linguistic effort by accommodating her guest's language limitations, rather than insisting on Korean communication. "Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Kim," Catalina responds with a bow that's been practiced but feels genuinely respectful, rather than performatively appropriate. "Your son has taught me that Korean hospitality reflects deep cultural values about family and honor." The response demonstrates Catalina's preparation and cultural sensitivity, but also her ability to connect Korean values with universal human principles that transcend specific ethnic traditions. Min-jun's father, Kim Jong-seok, approaches the introduction with the business-like evaluation that's defined his career in Korean corporate leadership. His questions are polite but pointed, designed to assess Catalina's intelligence, cultural understanding, and long-term intentions regarding his son and family reputation. Ms. Vega, Min-jun tells us you operate a restaurant that preserves your family's culinary traditions. In Korean culture, we deeply respect businesses that maintain generational knowledge. Tell us about your approach to balancing tradition with modern commercial requirements. The question allows Catalina to demonstrate business acumen while discussing cultural preservation, exactly the kind of bridge building that might help Korean society see her as someone who honors, rather than threatens, traditional values. "In my family, we believe that tradition stays alive only when it serves contemporary needs," Catalina responds thoughtfully. "Our recipes haven't changed in 3 generations, but we've adapted our presentation and marketing to help Mexican culture find new audiences. The goal isn't preservation for its own sake, but sharing our heritage in ways that build community rather than isolate it." Min-jun's parents exchange glances that suggest impressed surprise. They had expected either naive enthusiasm or defensive resistance, not sophisticated cultural philosophy that demonstrates both respect for tradition and pragmatic business sense. "And your thoughts on the media attention surrounding your relationship with our son?" Mrs. Kim inquires with diplomatic directness. "I understand that Min-jun's personal choices affect more than just his individual happiness," Catalina replies carefully. "In Mexican culture, we have similar expectations about family loyalty and community responsibility. My concern is ensuring that our relationship brings honor to both families, rather than creating unnecessary controversy." The answer demonstrates cultural intelligence that goes beyond superficial etiquette to genuine understanding of Korean social dynamics. Catalina isn't rejecting Korean expectations. She's positioning herself as someone who shares similar values, despite expressing them through different cultural traditions. As dinner progresses through multiple courses of traditional Korean cuisine, Min-jun watches his parents' initial skepticism gradually transform into cautious approval. Catalina asks thoughtful questions about Korean cooking techniques, draws parallels between Korean and Mexican approaches to family dining, and demonstrates genuine curiosity about cultural practices that extends beyond polite tourist interest. "Tell us about your family's immigration story," Mr. Kim requests during the main course. "How did they build their business in a foreign country while maintaining their cultural identity?" The question creates an opportunity for Catalina to demonstrate the kind of entrepreneurial spirit and cultural persistence that Korean business families respect, regardless of ethnic background. My grandfather came to America with nothing but his grandmother's recipes and a belief that authentic food could build bridges between communities, Catalina explains. He started with a food cart in East LA, saved every penny, and eventually opened the first Vega family restaurant. When he died, my father expanded the business while my mother taught cooking classes to preserve our traditions. Now, Elena and I represent the third generation, finding new ways to honor our heritage while building sustainable careers. The narrative resonates with Korean immigrant experience and business philosophy. The Kims recognize the familiar pattern of family sacrifice, generational responsibility, and cultural preservation that defines their own corporate dynasty. Your family values align closely with Korean principles, Mrs. Kim observes approvingly. Perhaps the cultural differences between you and Min-jun are less significant than the media suggests. I think love requires respect for differences rather than elimination of them, Catalina responds. Min-jun and I don't need to become the same person. We need to honor what each of us brings to the relationship while building something new together. The statement captures exactly the kind of balanced wisdom that Korean family culture values: acknowledgement of individual identity within collective harmony, respect for tradition, alongside openness to change. As the evening concludes, Mr. Kim addresses Min-jun directly with the formal tone reserved for serious family business. Your choice shows good judgment, he declares, a statement that carries enormous weight in Korean family hierarchy. Ms. Vega demonstrates the qualities we value: intelligence, cultural respect, family loyalty, and business competence. If the board questions your relationship tomorrow, you have our full support. The parental endorsement transforms tomorrow's corporate battle from personal crisis into family honor defense. Director Park's strategy of isolating Min-jun by portraying his relationship as family embarrassment has just collapsed under the weight of authentic cultural bridge building. But as Min-jun and Catalina return to his Seoul apartment, through streets filled with curious observers and persistent photographers, they both understand that parental approval, while crucial, won't be enough to overcome the systematic corporate attack Director Park has been orchestrating for months. Tomorrow's board meeting will determine not just Min-jun's career future, but whether Korean business culture can evolve to embrace authentic international relationships that honor, rather than threaten, traditional values. Can love that's earned family approval survive the cold calculation of corporate politics, where human emotion becomes strategic weakness? The morning of the decisive board meeting dawns gray and bitter in Seoul, December wind cutting through the glass canyons of Gangnam with the same precision Director Park has applied to his 8-month campaign to destroy Min-jun's corporate authority. At 6 a.m., while Seoul's business district prepares for another day of hierarchical negotiations and calculated power plays, Park sits in his office reviewing the final weapons in his arsenal, documents that will transform personal privacy into professional liability, regardless of any parental endorsement or cultural bridge building. His assistant enters with coffee and the overnight intelligence reports that have become Park's morning routine since Min-jun's relationship became public knowledge. The surveillance photographs spread across his desk tell a calculated story. Intimate moments weaponized, private gestures transformed into evidence of compromised judgment, love reframed as weakness in the context of Korean corporate expectations. The parents' dinner appears to have gone well, his assistant reports with obvious concern. Social media coverage suggests the Kim family has accepted Ms. Vega, which undermines our cultural incompatibility narrative. Park studies photographs of Min-jun and Catalina leaving the family residence, noting their relaxed body language and the obvious parental approval that complicates his strategy of isolating Min-jun from traditional Korean support systems. Expected, Park replies without visible concern. Desperate parents will accept any relationship that preserves their son's corporate position. But family sentiment won't override board fiduciary responsibility when presented with evidence of financial manipulation and security risks. He opens the final folder, the one containing documentation that will destroy Min-jun's credibility, regardless of cultural adaptation or family acceptance. Bank records showing the medical charity payments, communications between Min-jun's staff and Mexican hospitals, financial transfers that can be portrayed as either generous assistance or calculated manipulation, depending on narrative framing. The medical bills present our strongest angle, Park explains to his assistant. Anonymous charity that can be traced to Min-jun's personal accounts, financial assistance provided without Ms. Vega's knowledge or consent, economic dependency, created through strategic generosity. The board will see classic manipulation tactics, disguised as romantic gesture. And if Min-jun admits to the payments openly, if he frames it as genuine concern for her family's welfare, then he validates our argument about compromised judgment. Park smiles with predatory satisfaction. CEOs who make unilateral decisions about million-dollar charitable contributions based on personal emotional attachment demonstrate exactly the kind of impaired reasoning that threatens corporate stability. The strategy is elegant in its ruthless logic. Min-jun's generosity becomes evidence of poor business judgment, while his secrecy about the payments suggests awareness that his behavior was professionally inappropriate. Either defense validates Park's argument for leadership change. Park's phone rings with the encrypted number reserved for his most valuable intelligence source. Someone inside Min-jun's inner circle who's been providing strategic information throughout the campaign. The CEO is planning a comprehensive defense, the voice reports. He intends to address the medical payment issue directly, frame it as evidence of genuine relationship commitment rather than manipulation. Secretary Jung has prepared documentation showing that similar charitable contributions have been made to various causes over the past 5 years, suggesting a pattern of generosity rather than targeted manipulation. The information forces Park to adjust his tactical approach. If Min-jun can demonstrate a history of anonymous charitable giving, the medical payments become part of a broader pattern of social responsibility rather than evidence of romantic manipulation. What about the woman's financial status? Any evidence of ongoing dependency or expectation of continued support? None discovered. Her restaurant business appears financially stable. She continues sending money to family in Mexico from her own earnings, and she's refused several expensive gifts from Min-jun. The dependency narrative is difficult to sustain when the evidence suggests financial independence. Park's confidence wavers slightly as he realizes that Catalina's behavior contradicts the gold digger characterization that's been central to his media strategy. Women seeking financial advantage don't typically refuse expensive gifts or maintain their own economic independence. Then we focus on cultural incompatibility and security risks. Park decides, shifting to his backup strategy. Foreign national with detailed knowledge of Min-jun's business practices and personal vulnerabilities. Family members in Mexico who could be compromised by criminal organizations seeking leverage against Korean corporate interests. The argument requires significant logical leaps, but Park has successfully weaponized smaller concerns into major corporate crises throughout his career. Korean business culture's conservative instincts about foreign relationships provide fertile ground for fear-based narratives about industrial espionage and cultural infiltration. At 8 a.m., 2 hours before the board meeting, Park receives the call that represents either his greatest triumph or most devastating defeat. The board members have requested a preliminary meeting to discuss strategy, and their tone suggests uncertainty about the accusations Park has been cultivating for months. Director Park. Board Chairman Lee's voice carries unusual formality. We need to discuss your allegations before the official meeting. Some members have expressed concerns about the evidence you've presented and the methods used to obtain it. The statement hits Park like cold water. He's assumed that board members would rubber stamp his accusations without detailed scrutiny, trusting his judgment and sharing his goal of removing Min-jun from corporate leadership. What specific concerns, Chairman Lee? The surveillance photographs, the financial investigations, the media leaks. Several members question whether your tactics violate corporate ethics standards and potentially expose the company to legal liability for harassment and privacy invasion. Park realizes that his systematic campaign to destroy Min-jun has backfired by demonstrating exactly the kind of ruthless manipulation that Korean business culture officially condemns, even when it privately tolerates such behavior for strategic advantage. The board's fiduciary responsibility requires thorough evaluation of leadership competence, Park responds carefully. The CEO's emotional compromise and security risks justify extraordinary investigative measures. Or, Chairman Lee replies with dangerous quiet, your personal ambition has led you to cross ethical boundaries that reflect poorly on the entire organization. We'll discuss this at 9 a.m. Be prepared to justify not only your accusations against Min-jun, but your methods of obtaining evidence to support those accusations. Corporate future, but the public reputation of the woman he loves. The medical payment issue is actually our strongest asset, Jung explains. The documentation shows a 5-year pattern of anonymous charitable giving totaling over $10 million. Catalina's grandmother's medical bills represent less than 1% of your total philanthropic contributions. And the privacy violation concerns? Addressed by demonstrating that you learned about the medical crisis through routine security background checks that are standard for all CEOs dating anyone seriously. The investigation wasn't targeted harassment, but reasonable due diligence given your corporate position. Taejun spreads his photographs across the coffee table. Images that tell a different story than Park's surveillance shots. These pictures show cultural exchange, genuine learning, family acceptance, and the kind of authentic human connection that Korean society claims to value, despite its corporate culture's emphasis on calculated relationships. The visual narrative supports your case, Taejun observes. Park's photos make you look weak and manipulated. Mine make you look like someone who's discovered authentic happiness and is mature enough to defend it against professional opposition. But as Min-jun prepares to face the most important meeting of his corporate life, he receives a text message that changes everything. I can't do this anymore. The pressure, the media attention, the way your world transforms our private feelings into public entertainment. I'm not strong enough for this battle. I'm sorry. Catalina. The message hits Min-jun like a physical blow. After surviving family scrutiny, cultural challenges, and media manipulation, Catalina has decided that the cost of loving him exceeds what she's willing to pay. But 3 floors below, in the hotel lobby, Director Park's final gambit unfolds as his assistant approaches Catalina with an envelope containing photographs that will either destroy her trust in Min-jun forever or reveal the depth of manipulation she's been fighting since arriving in Seoul. The board meeting that will determine Min-jun's fate is about to begin, but the woman whose love has transformed his understanding of authentic success may have already decided that some bridges are too dangerous to cross. What happens when love becomes a weapon that can destroy the very people it was meant to protect? The text message from Catalina reaches Min-jun 20 minutes before the most crucial board meeting of his corporate life. But instead of heading to Mintech's 43rd floor boardroom, he finds himself racing through Seoul's morning traffic toward the Intercontinental Hotel, where Catalina has been staying since their arrival 3 days ago. His driver navigates between delivery trucks and early commuters, while Min-jun stares at Catalina's message, trying to understand what could have shattered her resolve after surviving family dinners, media scrutiny, and cultural challenges that would have defeated most people. Her strength has been his anchor throughout this crisis. The idea that she might abandon their relationship now feels impossible to process. Secretary Young's voice crackles through his phone speaker as she provides real-time updates from Mintech headquarters. Sir, the board meeting has been delayed 30 minutes at Director Park's request. He claims to have new evidence that requires immediate review before the official proceedings begin. What kind of evidence? Unknown, but several board members seem concerned about Park's investigative methods. Chairman Lee specifically mentioned ethical violations and potential legal liability for the company. There's a possibility that Park has overplayed his position. The information should encourage Min-jun, but his focus remains fixed on reaching Catalina before whatever force has broken her confidence can complete its damage. Through Seoul's glass towers and neon-lit commercial districts, he searches for understanding of what could transform her courage into retreat. The hotel lobby buzzes with its usual international business activity, but Min-jun notices immediately that something feels wrong. Clusters of well-dressed Korean businessmen occupy strategic positions near the elevators and exits, their body language suggesting surveillance rather than casual presence. Director Park's final gambit appears to involve more than corporate boardroom manipulation. Min-jun approaches the front desk with growing unease, requesting Catalina's room number despite knowing she's expecting him to be in the board meeting that will determine his professional future. "I'm sorry, sir," the desk clerk responds with practiced diplomacy. "But Ms. Vega checked out approximately 1 hour ago. She left this for Kim Min-jun." The envelope contains more than Catalina's brief goodbye message. Inside, Min-jun discovers a collection of surveillance photographs that tell a story designed to destroy any remaining trust between them. Images of his staff investigating her family's background, documentation of the financial transfers that paid for her grandmother's medical care, and most devastatingly, transcripts of conversations between his security team and Mexican medical officials that make his charitable gesture appear calculated and manipulative. But the final document stops Min-jun cold. A forged bank transfer record suggesting that Catalina has been receiving monthly payments from his personal accounts for the past 6 months, creating the illusion that she's been financially dependent on him throughout their relationship. The forgery is sophisticated enough to pass casual inspection, designed to make her appear exactly like the gold digger Director Park has been portraying in his media campaign. A handwritten note attached to the documents reads, "Now you understand why this relationship could never work. Some bridges require more trust than either of us possessed. I wish you success in tomorrow's meeting and happiness in your real life. Catalina." The message reveals that Catalina believes the forged documents are authentic, that she thinks Min-jun has been secretly supporting her financially, while allowing her to believe in her own independence. From her perspective, their entire relationship has been built on economic manipulation disguised as romantic interest. Min-jun's phone buzzes with an incoming call from an unfamiliar number with a Mexican country code. He answers immediately, hoping for some connection to Catalina's sudden departure. "Señor Min-jun?" The voice belongs to an elderly woman speaking accented English. "This is Rosa Vega, Catalina's grandmother. We need to speak immediately about my granddaughter's safety and your intentions regarding her future." The call from Abuela Rosa hits Min-jun like unexpected salvation. If anyone can help him understand Catalina's emotional state and provide guidance for repairing the damage Director Park's manipulation has caused, it's the woman whose medical crisis inadvertently provided ammunition for this final attack. "Mrs. Vega." "Yes, please." "Catalina has left Seoul, and I believe she's been given false information about our relationship that's made her think I've been manipulating her family financially." "Mijo?" Rosa's voice carries the authority of someone who's survived 8 decades of family crises and cultural challenges. "I know about the medical bills you paid, and I know about the lies someone has been telling to hurt both you and my granddaughter. But first, tell me something important. Do you love her for who she is, or for who you want her to become?" The question cuts through corporate strategy and media manipulation to the essential truth that's been obscured by months of political warfare. "I love her for who she is," Min-jun responds without hesitation. "She's taught me what authentic relationship means, what it feels like to be valued for something beyond wealth and corporate success. The woman I love exists completely independent of anything I could provide financially." "Bueno, then listen carefully, because we don't have much time. Catalina is flying back to Los Angeles this afternoon, convinced that you've been playing an elaborate game with her emotions. Someone has shown her documents that make it look like you've been supporting her secretly, destroying her belief in her own independence." The confirmation of Min-jun's worst fears comes with strategic information that offers hope for resolution. Catalina hasn't disappeared permanently. She's retreated to the safety of her family and cultural community, where healing and truth-telling might still be possible. "Mrs. Vega, the documents she saw are forgeries designed to destroy our relationship. I can prove that the only financial assistance I provided was for your medical care, and that was done without expecting anything in return. I know, mijo, but proving the truth to her head won't heal the hurt in her heart. Catalina has been betrayed by wealthy men before, men who thought they could buy her affection with generous gestures. She needs to know that you understand the difference between supporting someone and manipulating them." Rosa's insight reveals the deeper cultural and emotional dynamics that Director Park has been exploiting. Catalina's reaction isn't just about the forged documents. It's about her experience with men who've reduced her to an exotic acquisition, rather than honoring her as an equal partner. "What should I do?" The board meeting that determines my corporate future begins in 15 minutes, but none of that matters if I've lost her trust. Then you have a choice to make, Rosa says with the wisdom earned through decades of family leadership. You can fight for your corporate position, or you can fight for love. But Catalina needs to see which battle matters more to you. The ultimatum crystallizes everything Min-jun has been avoiding since this crisis began. Director Park's strategy has been based on the assumption that Min-jun would prioritize corporate success over personal happiness, that faced with a choice between professional achievement and authentic relationship, he would choose the familiar path of inherited obligation. If I abandon the board meeting, I lose everything I've worked to build over 8 years of corporate leadership, Min-jun admits. And if you abandon my granddaughter, you lose the person who's been helping you discover who you really are beneath all that corporate success, Rosa replies gently. Only you can decide which loss you could live with, Miho. Through the hotel lobby's windows, Min-jun can see Mintech Corporation's headquarters rising against Seoul's gray morning sky, representing everything his family has expected him to achieve and preserve. But in his hand, he holds evidence of Director Park's willingness to destroy innocent people to achieve corporate control, manipulation that extends far beyond business competition into personal cruelty. Mrs. Vega, if I come to Los Angeles to explain the truth to Catalina, to show her proof that the documents were forged and our relationship has been built on genuine feelings rather than financial manipulation, would she listen? That depends, Rosa responds thoughtfully, on whether you come as the Korean CEO trying to manage another business problem, or as the man who learned to make tortillas because he wanted to understand what mattered to the woman he loves. The distinction captures everything Min-jun has learned about authentic relationship over the past 4 months. Catalina fell in love with the man who asked respectful questions about her culture and demonstrated genuine curiosity about her family traditions, not the billionaire who could solve problems with financial resources. Tell her I'm coming, Min-jun decides, ending the call and turning away from Mintech's towers toward whatever transportation can get him to LAX fastest. And tell her I'm bringing proof that love built on respect doesn't require deception to sustain itself. But as he strides through the hotel lobby toward an uncertain future, Min-jun realizes that winning back Catalina's trust will require more than evidence of Director Park's manipulation. It will require demonstrating that he's learned the difference between protecting someone and respecting them, between providing assistance and creating dependency. The board meeting that would determine his corporate fate proceeds without him, but Min-jun has chosen a different kind of success. One measured in tortillas, learned to make properly, and trust rebuilt through authentic vulnerability rather than strategic calculation. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not in glass towers, but in family kitchens, where love proves itself through actions that honor rather than manipulate the people who matter most. Can a Korean billionaire convince a Mexican chef that some bridges are worth crossing, even when the journey requires abandoning everything familiar for something real? The flight from Seoul to LAX stretches 14 hours across the Pacific, giving Min-jun ample time to review the evidence that will either restore Catalina's trust or confirm her worst fears about wealthy men who mistake generosity for manipulation. In his first-class seat, surrounded by business documents he no longer cares about reading, he studies the forensic analysis Secretary Jung prepared before his abrupt departure from Korea, detailed proof that the financial records shown to Catalina were sophisticated forgeries designed to destroy their relationship. His phone displays a constant stream of notifications from Korean business media, covering his dramatic absence from the board meeting that was supposed to determine his corporate future. The headlines tell a story he's no longer invested in controlling. Mintech CEO abandons critical board meeting for foreign girlfriend. Korean business leader chooses love over corporate responsibility. Kim Min-jun's career ends not with boardroom battle, but airport romance. But one message captures his attention with its unexpected source and timing. Tae-jun has forwarded a video from Korean social media that's gone viral in the 12 hours since Min-jun left Seoul for Los Angeles. Footage of Director Park's board presentation that reveals more about corporate manipulation than any investigative journalism. The video shows Park presenting his case against Min-jun to the gathered board members, displaying surveillance photographs and financial documents with the confidence of someone who believes he's orchestrating the perfect corporate coup. But the footage also captures the moment when Park's ethical violations became undeniable to the very people he was trying to convince. The CEO's emotional compromise has created security vulnerabilities that threaten corporate stability, Park declares in the video, gesturing toward enlarged photographs of Min-jun and Catalina sharing dinner at La Cocina de Abuela. His relationship with this foreign national demonstrates impaired judgment that affects his capacity for rational business decision-making. But Chairman Lee's response, clearly audible in the recording, transforms Park's accusation into self-indictment. Director Park, how did you obtain these photographs? What authorization did you receive for surveillance of our CEO's private life? And why should this board trust someone who demonstrates such willingness to violate privacy and personal dignity for corporate advantage? The video continues with Park's increasingly desperate attempts to justify investigative methods that reveal more about his character than Min-jun's supposed vulnerabilities. Board members exchange uncomfortable glances as they realize they've been manipulated by someone whose ambition has crossed ethical boundaries that Korean business culture officially condemns. The medical bill payments represent financial manipulation designed to create dependency and loyalty, Park argues, presenting the forged documents that convinced Catalina of Min-jun's deception. This foreign woman has been receiving monthly support payments that compromise her independence and our CEO's objectivity. But board member Kim Sung-ho, who has access to Mintech's financial records, immediately identifies discrepancies in Park's evidence. Director Park, these account numbers don't match our CEO's personal banking information. These transfer records appear to have been altered or fabricated. Are you presenting forged documents to influence our board decision? The moment when Park's conspiracy collapses is captured in devastating detail. His confident expression transforms into panic as board members realize they've been asked to remove their CEO based on falsified evidence and illegal surveillance tactics. The video's final minutes show Chairman Lee delivering Park's professional execution with the formal authority that defines Korean corporate hierarchy. This board meeting is suspended pending investigation of evidence tampering and privacy violations. Director Park, you are relieved of all duties pending resolution of potential criminal charges. Secretary Jung, please contact CEO Kim and inform him that this board stands ready to address any legitimate concerns about corporate governance through proper channels, not through manipulation and fraud. As Min-jun watches Park's downfall from 30,000 feet above the Pacific, he realizes that truth has a way of emerging, despite sophisticated attempts at deception. The man who spent 8 months trying to destroy an authentic relationship has instead destroyed his own credibility by demonstrating exactly the kind of unethical behavior that Korean business culture cannot tolerate. But the corporate victory feels hollow, compared to the personal crisis that remains unresolved. Catalina still believes that Min-jun has been manipulating her family's circumstances, still thinks their relationship was built on economic inequality disguised as romantic interest. Corporate vindication won't heal the emotional damage Park's final gambit has caused. The plane touches down at LAX under California's perpetual sunshine, a stark contrast to Seoul's winter grayness and the emotional storm that's been building since Catalina discovered the forged documents. Min-jun navigates through customs and immigration with the strange sensation of returning to a world where his corporate identity matters less than his capacity for authentic human connection. Elena waits in the arrivals area with the protective expression that's defined her role as Catalina's younger sister throughout this crisis. Her greeting carries none of the warmth that characterized their previous interactions. Now, she's evaluating Min-jun as a potential threat to her sister's emotional welfare, rather than welcoming him as a prospective family member. She doesn't want to see you, Elena states without preamble as they walk toward the parking structure. The documents you people showed her, the evidence of financial manipulation. She feels humiliated and betrayed. She trusted you, and she believes you've been lying about everything that mattered. The documents were forged, Elena. Director Park created false evidence to destroy our relationship and remove me from corporate leadership. I have forensic proof that the financial records were fabricated. Elena stops walking and turns to face him with the directness that characterizes her family's approach to difficult conversations. Even if that's true, even if you can prove the documents were fake, you still investigated her family's finances without permission. You still paid my grandmother's medical bills without consulting anyone. You still made unilateral decisions about our family's life because you thought you knew what was best for us. The accusation hits Min-jun with devastating accuracy because it addresses behavior that wasn't forged or manipulated, his genuine actions that violated Catalina's autonomy despite being motivated by care and concern. You're right, he admits. I made decisions based on my resources and perspective without respecting Catalina's right to handle her family's challenges independently. But Elena, I need you to understand the difference between what I actually did wrong and what Park fabricated to make those mistakes appear calculating rather than clumsy. They resume walking through the parking structure as Elena processes his admission of genuine wrongdoing alongside his claims about forged evidence. Her expression softens slightly as she recognizes that Min-jun isn't defending all his actions, just distinguishing between honest mistakes and deliberate manipulation. She's at the restaurant, Elena says finally. Abuela Rosa flew in from Mexico yesterday to help manage the situation. If you want to speak to Catalina, you'll need to convince our grandmother that your intentions are honorable rather than strategic. The prospect of facing Abuela Rosa after everything that's transpired fills Min-jun with anxiety that exceeds any board meeting or corporate negotiation he's ever navigated. Rosa represents not only Catalina's family authority, but also the cultural wisdom that will determine whether cross-cultural bridges can be rebuilt, or whether some betrayals of trust cannot be repaired. As Elena's car navigates through Los Angeles traffic toward Boyle Heights and La Cocina de Abuela, Min-jun reviews the evidence that should restore Catalina's trust, while understanding that emotional healing requires more than forensic proof of Director Park's deception. He needs to demonstrate that he's learned the difference between supporting someone and patronizing them, between offering assistance and creating dependency, between love that empowers and love that diminishes the very person it claims to cherish. The restaurant that's been their sanctuary from corporate warfare and cultural challenges now awaits as the venue where Min-jun must prove that some relationships are worth crossing oceans to preserve. Not because love conquers all obstacles, but because authentic connection provides the strength needed to overcome whatever barriers fear and manipulation attempt to create. Can a Korean billionaire convince a Mexican family that his love has been genuine despite his methods being flawed, and that trust broken by deception can be rebuilt through vulnerability and respect? La Cocina de Abuela feels different when Min-jun enters through the front door. He's used dozens of times over the past 4 months. The familiar warmth and aromatic complexity of traditional Mexican spices remain unchanged, but the atmosphere carries tension that transforms his sanctuary into a courtroom where his character will face final judgment. Catalina stands behind the service counter with her back toward the entrance, methodically arranging fresh flowers on each table with movements that suggest nervous energy rather than routine maintenance. She doesn't acknowledge his presence, though her posture indicates awareness of his arrival. The careful distance she maintains speaks volumes about the emotional walls that Park's manipulation has rebuilt between them. Abuela Rosa occupies the corner booth where Min-jun and Catalina shared their first meaningful conversation 4 months ago. At 78, she possesses the kind of quiet authority that makes billionaire CEOs feel like nervous schoolchildren seeking approval from the only adult in the room. Her weathered hands fold prayer-like around a cup of café de olla, and her dark eyes study Min-jun with the penetrating assessment of someone who's survived 8 decades of family crises and cultural challenges. Mijo. Rosa addresses him in the mixture of Spanish and English that defines her generation's bilingual wisdom. Sit down. We have important things to discuss about love, truth, and the difference between protecting someone and respecting them. Min-jun approaches the booth with the same trepidation he's felt entering corporate boardrooms, where hostile takeovers were being negotiated. But this conversation will determine something more valuable than stock prices or quarterly earnings. It will decide whether authentic love can survive the systematic manipulation designed to destroy it. Mrs. Vega, I know Catalina believes I've been manipulating her family financially. I have proof that the documents she saw were forged by someone trying to destroy our relationship. But I understand that evidence alone won't repair the trust that's been broken. Rosa nods slowly, her expression carrying the patient wisdom of someone who's mediated countless family disputes and cultural misunderstandings over decades of immigrant community leadership. Show me your proof, mijo, But first, tell me something more important. What did you learn about yourself during the time when you thought you might lose her forever? The question cuts through corporate strategy and legal documentation to the essential transformation that Min-jun has been avoiding acknowledging even to himself. The 13-hour flight from Seoul provided ample time for self-reflection that went deeper than tactical planning or damage control. I learned that I've been so afraid of rejection that I've been protecting myself by controlling situations instead of trusting people, Min-jun admits, his voice carrying vulnerability that would be impossible to fake. When I paid for your medical bills without telling Catalina, I thought I was being generous. But really, I was avoiding the risk that she might refuse my help, which would force me to respect her independence even when it meant watching her family struggle. Rosa's expression softens slightly as she recognizes the authentic self-awareness that distinguishes genuine repentance from strategic manipulation. Her decades of community counseling have taught her to identify the difference between men who apologize to regain control and those who apologize because they've genuinely learned something important about themselves. And what about the investigation of our family's finances? What did you learn about that decision? That investigating someone's private life without permission is a violation of dignity regardless of the motivation behind it. I told myself I was protecting Catalina from Director Park's attacks, but really, I was treating her like someone too fragile to handle the truth about my world and the dangers it creates for people I care about. The assessment demonstrates the kind of cultural intelligence that goes beyond surface-level etiquette to genuine understanding of why certain actions feel violating, regardless of their intended outcomes. Rosa has watched too many wealthy men mistake paternalistic protection for romantic care to be easily deceived by superficial apologies. Min-jun removes a folder from his jacket, spreading the forensic analysis across the table between them. The documents tell a clear story of digital manipulation, altered bank records, fabricated transaction histories, sophisticated forgeries designed to make Catalina appear financially dependent on Min-jun throughout their relationship. Director Park created false evidence to convince Catalina that I've been secretly supporting her for months, Min-jun explains, pointing to the technical analysis that exposes the deception. The only financial assistance I actually provided was for your medical care, and that was done anonymously through a charitable foundation without expectation of gratitude or loyalty. Rosa studies the documents with the careful attention of someone who understands that technical proof, while important, addresses only one aspect of the emotional damage that's been inflicted. Her granddaughter's hurt extends beyond the forged evidence to the deeper violation of trust involved in making unilateral decisions about family welfare. This explains why she believed you had been lying about everything, Rosa observes, but it doesn't address why you made decisions about our family's life without consulting us. Generosity that comes without respect feels like manipulation, Miho, even when the intentions are good. The gentle correction forces Min-jun to confront the patronizing assumptions that have guided his behavior, despite his genuine feelings for Catalina. Korean corporate culture has trained him to solve problems through resource application and strategic decision-making. But Mexican family culture requires consultation, consensus, and respect for collective dignity. You're absolutely right, Min-jun acknowledges. I should have talked to Catalina about her grandmother's medical situation, offered assistance as a partner, rather than making unilateral decisions as a benefactor. The fact that my intentions were caring doesn't excuse the violation of agency involved in acting without permission. And now? What are you prepared to do differently if my granddaughter gives you another chance to prove that you've learned something important about love and respect? The question requires Min-jun to demonstrate that his understanding of authentic relationship extends beyond crisis management to ongoing behavioral change. Rosa needs to see evidence that he's internalized lessons about partnership equality rather than simply apologizing strategically to regain access to someone he's lost. I want to show her that I'm capable of building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than protective control, Min-jun responds carefully. That means consulting her about decisions that affect our future, respecting her right to handle challenges independently even when I have resources that could help, and trusting her strength enough to be honest about vulnerabilities in my world, rather than trying to shield her from them. His phone buzzes with a message that transforms the personal conversation into international news. Seoul Stock Exchange suspended Mintech trading pending announcement of CEO succession. Korean business media reporting your dramatic resignation to pursue relationship in America. Young. The corporate world that defined Min Jun's identity for 8 years has moved forward without him, treating his choice to prioritize personal authenticity over professional obligation as evidence of career-ending instability. But for the first time in his adult life, Min Jun feels no anxiety about losing corporate position or social status. It appears your business world has decided that love makes men unreliable for corporate leadership, Rosa observes, reading the message over his shoulder. Maybe they're right, Min Jun replies with surprising calm. Maybe men who prioritize authentic relationships over strategic advancement aren't suitable for corporations that treat human emotions as professional liabilities. But that doesn't mean they're unsuitable for building lives that matter beyond quarterly profit reports. The response demonstrates exactly the kind of value realignment that Rosa has been hoping to see. Evidence that Min Jun's feelings for Catalina have inspired genuine transformation rather than temporary infatuation that will fade when career consequences become clear. Catalina! Rosa calls to her granddaughter, who's been maintaining careful distance throughout their conversation. Come sit with us. This man has something important to say, and you need to hear his words along with his proof about the lies someone told to hurt both of you. Catalina approaches the booth with obvious reluctance, her posture suggesting someone prepared for additional betrayal rather than reconciliation. The pain in her expression reveals how deeply Park's manipulation has damaged not just their relationship, but her ability to trust her own judgment about people and their motivations. I know you have no reason to believe anything I say, Min Jun begins, but I need you to understand the difference between what I actually did wrong and what Director Park fabricated to make those mistakes appear calculated rather than clumsy. He slides the forensic analysis across the table, explaining the technical evidence that proves the financial dependency documents were sophisticated forgeries designed to destroy their relationship. But even as he presents proof of Park's deception, Min Jun recognizes that restored trust will require more than vindication. It will require demonstrated change in how he approaches partnership and respect. Even if those documents were fake, Catalina says quietly. You still investigated my family's finances without permission. You still paid my grandmother's medical bills without asking if we wanted your help. You still made decisions about our lives because you thought you knew better than we did about what was best for us. You're absolutely right, Min Jun admits without defensiveness. I violated your family's dignity by acting unilaterally, and I understand that generous intentions don't excuse paternalistic behavior. But Catalina, I need you to know that the man who asked respectful questions about your culture and listened carefully to your stories about family traditions, that person was real. The only deception was about my wealth and corporate position, not about my feelings or my desire to learn from your perspective. The distinction between identity deception and emotional authenticity represents the crucial issue that will determine whether their relationship can be rebuilt. Catalina needs to know that Min Jun's curiosity about Mexican culture, his genuine laughter at family stories, and his careful attention to cultural protocols weren't performances designed to manipulate her affections. If that's true, Catalina responds, if the man who helped with dishes and learned to make tortillas was authentic, despite lying about his name and occupation, then prove it by doing something that demonstrates respect for my agency, rather than just apologizing for violating it. The challenge requires Min Jun to move beyond words to actions that honor Catalina's independence, while demonstrating his commitment to building an egalitarian partnership. Rosa watches the exchange with the satisfaction of someone who's successfully guided two people toward the kind of honest communication that makes authentic reconciliation possible. What would you like me to do? Min Jun asks. Go back to Korea, Catalina says simply. Fix the corporate mess that Director Park created, clear your name and your reputation, prove to yourself and everyone else that you're capable of handling your professional responsibilities without abandoning your personal integrity. And then, if you still want to build something real with me, come back and ask if I'm interested in a relationship between equals rather than between a billionaire and his cultural curiosity project. The ultimatum forces Min Jun to choose between immediate reconciliation and long-term respect, between pressing his case now when emotions are volatile and proving his commitment through actions that honor Catalina's request for space and autonomy. But as he looks at the woman who's taught him the difference between protective love and respectful love, Minjun realizes that some bridges are worth crossing multiple times, and that authentic partnership requires the patience to let trust rebuild naturally, rather than demanding immediate forgiveness. The CEO who abandoned a boardroom to fight for love discovers that the most important victories are won, not through dramatic gestures, but through consistent demonstration of values that honor, rather than diminish the people we claim to cherish. Can a Korean billionaire learn that sometimes loving someone means giving them the space to choose you freely, rather than trying to win them back through apologies and explanations? The Saturday morning market in Boyle Heights explodes with colors, sounds, and aromas that represent everything Minjun has learned to love about Catalina's world over the past 4 months. Vendors call out prices in Spanish and English, children weave between stalls chasing soccer balls, and the scent of fresh tortillas mingles with cilantro and lime in ways that make his chest tight with memory and loss. 3 weeks have passed since Catalina asked him to return to Korea and fix the corporate crisis before pursuing their relationship further. 3 weeks of video calls with Secretary Young, emergency board meetings conducted via satellite connection, and the systematic restoration of his professional reputation while living in a culture he's grown to love, but may soon be forced to abandon. Elena finds him standing before a fruit vendor's display, staring at perfectly arranged mangoes as if they contain answers to questions he's afraid to ask directly. His presence in the market has become routine over the past weeks, a daily pilgrimage that allows him to remain connected to Catalina's world while respecting her request for space and independence. She misses you, Elena says without preamble, joining him at the mango display with grocery bags that suggest she's been watching his morning routine and chose this moment for intervention. She asked me to give her space to think without pressure from my presence, Minjun replies, though hope flickers in his voice despite his attempt at neutral acceptance. My sister is stubborn and proud, and she's been hurt by wealthy men who thought Mexican women were entertaining distractions from their real lives. But she's also been crying herself to sleep for 3 weeks, and Abuela Rosa says that kind of heartbreak only comes from losing something precious, not from avoiding something dangerous. The revelation hits Minjun like unexpected salvation. He's been interpreting Catalina's silence as evidence that she's healing from their relationship and moving forward with her life. The possibility that she's grieving their separation as deeply as he is transforms his understanding of the past 3 weeks. The corporate situation in Korea is resolved, Minjun admits. Director Park has been arrested for evidence tampering and illegal surveillance. The board issued a formal apology and requested my return to full CEO authority. But I can't go back to that life, Elena. I can't pretend that 4 months of authentic happiness didn't change what I want from my future. Elena studies his face with the protective assessment that's defined her role as Catalina's younger sister throughout this cultural and emotional crisis. She's watched her sister navigate relationships with men who promised respect while delivering condescension, and she needs to distinguish between genuine transformation and strategic performance. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying I submitted my resignation to the Mintech board 2 days ago. Effective immediately, with recommendation that my younger brother Taijun assume interim leadership while they conduct a proper succession search. I'm staying in Los Angeles, starting a consulting firm that helps Korean companies develop authentic cultural partnerships rather than exploitative market penetration strategies. The decision represents everything Minjun has learned about authentic success versus inherited obligation. Korean corporate culture will interpret his choice as career suicide motivated by romantic infatuation, but he's discovered that some forms of failure are actually forms of liberation. And Catalina knows about this resignation? Not yet. I wanted to make sure the decision was final and irreversible before telling her, so she'd know it wasn't a manipulation tactic designed to win her back through dramatic gesture. I chose this life because it's what I want, not because it's what she wants me to want. Elena's expression softens as she recognizes the mature reasoning behind Minjun's decision. He's not abandoning his career for love. He's choosing a career that aligns with values that love has helped him discover within himself. She's at the restaurant, Elena says, checking her phone. Saturday lunch prep. But Minjun, if you go to see her, you need to understand that she's scared. Not of loving you, but of losing herself in the process. Mexican culture teaches women to support their men's dreams, sometimes at the expense of their own independence. I don't want her to support my dreams at the expense of hers. I want to build dreams that honor both our cultures and ambitions equally. Then tell her that. Tell her what you just told me about choosing Los Angeles because it's where you want to live, not because it's where she happens to be. Tell her about the consulting firm and how you want to bridge cultures professionally, not just personally. The conversation provides Minjun with clarity about how to approach Catalina without making their relationship feel like a negotiation or a strategic campaign. He needs to demonstrate that his life choices reflect genuine values alignment rather than romantic compromise. But as he walks from the market toward La Cocina de Abuela, Minjun's phone rings with an international call that threatens to complicate his carefully planned approach to reconciliation. Hyung? Taijun's voice carries excitement mixed with professional urgency. The board meeting just ended. They've accepted your recommendation for interim leadership, but they want to discuss a different proposal, keeping you as chairman while I handle day-to-day CEO operations. You could maintain corporate connection while living wherever makes you happiest. The offer represents exactly the kind of compromise that Korean business culture specializes in, solutions that satisfy multiple constituencies while avoiding dramatic breaks with tradition. Minjun could maintain his corporate identity and financial security while pursuing his relationship with Catalina. What do you think? Minjun asks his brother. I think you need to decide whether you're running toward something authentic or running away from something difficult, Taejun replies with characteristic directness. If you want this life in LA because it makes you genuinely happy, then accept the chairman role and use that platform to build the cultural bridge consulting firm you described. But if you're choosing LA because you think sacrifice will prove your love to Catalina, then you're making the same mistake you made with the medical bills, trying to control outcomes through grand gestures instead of trusting authentic connection. The analysis forces Minjun to examine his motivations with uncomfortable honesty. Has he been making decisions based on genuine preference or strategic romance? Does he want to build a consulting firm because it represents meaningful work, or because it provides justification for abandoning his inherited corporate responsibilities? I'll call you back, Minjun decides, ending the conversation as La Cocina de Abuela comes into view with its familiar warmth and the promise of confronting the woman whose opinion matters more than any board resolution or career opportunity. Through the restaurant's windows, he can see Catalina preparing vegetables with the methodical precision that's always fascinated him, the way she treats each ingredient as deserving individual attention and respect. Her movements carry the confident grace of someone completely comfortable in her professional environment. And Minjun realizes that part of what he loves about her is how competently she inhabits her own chosen world. But as he approaches the entrance, Minjun notices tears streaming down Catalina's face as she works. Not the dramatic crying of someone having an emotional breakdown, but the steady, quiet tears of someone processing grief while maintaining functionality. The sight stops him cold with the recognition that his attempts to give her space might have been interpreted as abandonment rather than respect. Elena appears beside him on the sidewalk, having followed him from the market with obvious concern about how this reunion will unfold. She's been doing that every morning for 3 weeks, Elena admits quietly, crying while she cooks, like muscle memory of happiness that turned into heartbreak. Go inside, Minjun. Stop protecting her from your presence and start trusting her to handle her own emotions, including her feelings about seeing you again. The guidance represents exactly the lesson Minjun has been struggling to internalize, the difference between protective distance and respectful availability, between giving someone space and disappearing from their life entirely. He pushes open the restaurant's door, and the familiar chime announces his presence to the woman who's been crying over vegetable prep, while he's been standing outside analyzing their separation like a corporate merger requiring strategic planning. Sometimes love requires less strategy and more courage, the willingness to be present for difficult conversations, rather than managing them from a safe emotional distance. But will Catalina interpret his return as welcome honesty or unwelcome pressure? And can two people who've learned to love across cultural boundaries find their way back to trust after manipulation and good intentions created equal amounts of damage to their carefully built connection? The restaurant falls silent when Catalina looks up from her vegetable prep and sees Min-jun standing in the doorway like a question mark waiting for permission to become a period. Her hands still hold the knife she's been using to dice onions, a convenient excuse for the tears that have become her morning ritual. But her posture suggests someone preparing for emotional combat rather than culinary creation. "You came back," she observes, her voice carrying surprise mixed with something that might be hope or might be resignation. "I never left Los Angeles," Min-jun admits, stepping fully inside and allowing the door to close behind him. "I've been staying at a hotel downtown, giving you the space you requested while trying to figure out how to rebuild trust without pressuring you for immediate forgiveness." The revelation that he's been in the city for 3 weeks, rather than returning to Korea, changes Catalina's understanding of his commitment and her interpretation of his silence. She's been assuming that his absence meant he was prioritizing corporate responsibilities over their relationship, when actually he was respecting her explicitly stated need for independence. "Elena said you resigned from your company," Catalina continues, setting down her knife and giving him her full attention for the first time since the forged documents destroyed her trust in their relationship's authenticity. 2 days ago, officially and irreversibly. "I'm staying in Los Angeles permanently, starting a consulting firm that helps Korean companies develop respectful cultural partnerships rather than exploitative market expansion strategies. But Catalina, I need you to understand that these decisions aren't about winning you back through dramatic sacrifice. They're about choosing a life that aligns with values I've discovered I actually hold." Before Catalina can respond to his explanation, the restaurant's door chimes again to admit 2 unexpected visitors who will transform this private reconciliation into a family intervention with international implications. Tae-jun enters carrying his professional camera equipment and wearing the excited expression of someone who's just witnessed something remarkable. Behind him, Elena carries coffee for everyone, and the satisfied smile of someone whose carefully orchestrated plan is finally coming together. "Perfect timing," Tae-jun announces, immediately beginning to document the reunion with the photojournalist's instinct for capturing historically significant moments. "Hyung, tell her about the board meeting offer before she assumes you're choosing poverty for romance." "There was another option," Min-jun explains, his eyes remaining focused on Catalina's face as he gauges her reaction to developments she hasn't been informed about. "The board offered to make me chairman while Tae-jun handles CEO operations, which would allow me to maintain corporate connection and financial security while living wherever makes me happiest." "And you turned it down?" Catalina asks, her expression suggesting she's trying to understand whether his decision represents genuine preference or strategic romance. "Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first, because this choice affects more than just my career. It determines what kind of partnership we might build if you're willing to trust me again." The admission that he's consulting her about major life decisions before making them demonstrates exactly the kind of respect for her agency that Catalina has been hoping to see. Instead of presenting accomplished facts designed to impress her, he's including her in decision-making processes that will shape their potential future together. Elena sets coffee cups around the prep table, transforming the restaurant kitchen into an informal conference room, where personal relationships intersect with international business decisions. Her presence serves as cultural interpreter and family representative, ensuring that whatever resolution emerges honors both individual autonomy and collective dignity. "What do you want me to say?" Catalina asks carefully. "That you should take the chairman position because it's financially secure? That you should refuse it because sacrifice proves love? Either answer makes me responsible for your career decisions in ways that feel manipulative regardless of my intentions." The response demonstrates Catalina's sophisticated understanding of how power dynamics operate in cross-cultural relationships. She recognizes that advising Min-jun about his professional future could create dependency in either direction, making him resent her influence or making her feel obligated to support choices she didn't actually endorse. "I want you to tell me what partnership means to you," Min-jun responds. Not advice about my career, but your definition of what equal relationship looks like when two people come from different cultural and economic backgrounds. The question shifts their conversation from tactical decisions to fundamental values, exactly the kind of deeper exploration that authentic reconciliation requires, rather than surface-level problem-solving that leaves underlying issues unaddressed. Tae-jun continues photographing their interaction, while Elena provides family context that helps bridge the cultural and linguistic nuances involved in cross-cultural relationship negotiation. Both younger siblings understand that they're witnessing a conversation that will determine not only Min-jun and Catalina's romantic future, but also the possibility of genuine cultural integration that honors rather than diminishes difference. Partnership means making decisions together instead of making decisions for each other, Catalina says thoughtfully. It means respecting your ability to choose your own career path while expecting you to respect my ability to contribute meaningfully to whatever life we build together. It means financial arrangements that don't create hidden power imbalances and cultural exchange that adds to both our identities, rather than requiring either of us to abandon what makes us authentically ourselves. The definition captures everything Min-jun has been learning about authentic relationship over months of mistakes and discoveries. Catalina isn't rejecting his wealth or corporate background. She's establishing parameters for how those advantages can be integrated into partnership without creating the kind of inequality that makes genuine connection impossible. Then here's what I propose, Min-jun responds, his voice carrying the careful respect that's replaced his earlier tendency toward unilateral decision-making. I accept the chairman position, which provides financial stability and corporate influence without requiring me to live in Korea. I start the consulting firm here in LA, focusing on authentic cultural partnerships that benefit both Korean companies and local communities. We take time to rebuild trust through actions rather than words, with no pressure for immediate romantic resolution. And our families, the media attention, the cultural challenges that haven't disappeared just because we've had an honest conversation? The questions address practical realities that will determine whether theoretical partnership can survive real-world pressures from families, media, and societies that have strong opinions about appropriate relationships for their cultural representatives. Tae-jun stops photographing long enough to contribute strategic perspective earned through his marriage to Elena and his experience navigating similar cultural integration challenges. The Korean media coverage has actually been positive since Director Park's arrest, he reports. Public opinion sees Min-jun's choice to pursue authentic relationship as romantic rather than scandalous. And Elena's family has made it clear that they're prepared to support whatever decision Catalina makes about her personal happiness. Elena nods confirmation, adding the Mexican family perspective that will influence how their community interprets and supports whatever relationship emerges from this reconciliation process. Abuela Rosa says that love that survives crisis becomes stronger than love that never faces testing, Elena explains. Our family believes you've both learned important lessons about respect and communication that will serve you well, regardless of what you decide about romantic partnership. The family endorsement from both cultures provides crucial support for whatever relationship Min-jun and Catalina choose to rebuild, but it also creates pressure to succeed that could complicate their natural emotional recovery process. I have one more question, Catalina says, her voice carrying vulnerability that suggests she's approaching the issue that matters most to her emotional healing. When you were learning about Mexican culture, when you asked questions about our family traditions and helped with restaurant work, was that authentic curiosity? Or was it performance designed to make me feel valued while you collected interesting experiences from my world? The question cuts to the heart of what authentic cross-cultural relationship requires versus what cultural tourism provides. Catalina needs to know whether Min-jun's engagement with her heritage represented genuine respect or sophisticated fetishization disguised as romantic interest. It was authentic, Min-jun responds without hesitation. Learning about your culture taught me things about community, family loyalty, and generous hospitality that Korean corporate culture had trained me to see as weaknesses rather than strengths. I wasn't collecting experiences. I was discovering values that I wanted to integrate into my own identity. Then prove it, Catalina challenges gently. Show me that your interest in Mexican culture extends beyond your romantic interest in me. Build bridges professionally that honor what you learned personally. Use your cultural knowledge to create business opportunities that benefit communities like ours, rather than just profiting from them. The challenge provides exactly the framework Minjun needs to demonstrate authentic change through professional application of personal learning. Instead of compartmentalizing his relationship with Catalina as separate from his business identity, she's asking him to integrate cultural bridge building into his career in ways that prove genuine transformation. The consulting firm's first client is already confirmed. Minjun responds with growing excitement. A Korean food company that wants to enter the American market through authentic partnerships with Mexican-American restaurants rather than appropriating recipes and competing with family businesses. I recommended they start by hiring Catalina Vega as their cultural authenticity consultant. The revelation that he's created professional opportunities that honor rather than exploit her expertise demonstrates exactly the kind of respectful integration that Catalina has been hoping to see. Instead of treating her cultural knowledge as romantic entertainment, he's recognizing it as professional asset, worthy of compensation and respect. But as tears begin streaming down Catalina's face, this time from relief rather than grief, she realizes that some bridges are worth crossing multiple times, and that love built on genuine cultural respect can survive manipulation, misunderstanding, and the kind of systematic attack designed to destroy authentic human connection. The question that remains is whether two people who've learned to love across economic and cultural divides can transform their hard-won understanding into sustainable partnership that honors both their individual identities and their shared commitment to building something beautiful together. Sometimes the most important victories are won not through dramatic gestures, but through consistent demonstration of values that prove love is about respect rather than possession, partnership rather than performance, and cultural integration rather than cultural conquest. Can a Korean chairman and a Mexican chef build a consulting firm that becomes a model for how authentic cross-cultural relationships can create professional opportunities that benefit entire communities rather than just individual couples? The press conference at the Los Angeles Convention Center represents everything Minjun never wanted his relationship with Catalina to become. A media spectacle where private emotions are transformed into public entertainment for international consumption. But 3 months after their reconciliation and the successful launch of their cultural consulting firm, circumstances beyond their control have made public statement necessary to address Korean business media speculation about their partnership's authenticity. Secretary Young arranged the venue and coordinated logistics with the professional efficiency that's defined her role throughout Minjun's corporate transformation, from isolated CEO to culturally integrated business leader. Today, she stands at the side of the stage, managing media credentials and translation services for a press conference that will either vindicate their relationship or destroy it, depending on how successfully they navigate questions designed to expose any remaining deception. Catalina adjusts her tailored blazer, a compromise between Mexican colorful tradition and Korean business formality that represents the cultural integration they've achieved in both personal and professional contexts. The past 3 months of working together have demonstrated that their relationship can survive not only romantic challenges, but also the practical pressures of building a business that requires constant navigation between different cultural expectations. The questions will focus on authenticity, Minjun warns quietly as they review their prepared statement one final time. Korean business journalists want evidence that our relationship is genuine rather than strategic, while American media will ask whether our consulting firm represents authentic cultural exchange or sophisticated marketing manipulation. And we'll answer honestly, Catalina replies with the confidence she's developed since becoming a recognized expert in cross-cultural business authenticity. Our relationship started with deception, survived manipulation, and transformed into partnership based on genuine respect for each other's cultures and professional capabilities. The simple summary encapsulates everything they've learned about authentic relationship over 8 months of mistakes, discoveries, and gradual trust building that's created both personal happiness and professional success. The press conference begins with Minjun's prepared statement about resigning from Mintech Corporation's CEO position to pursue authentic cultural bridge building through his consulting firm. But the real news emerges when he introduces Catalina not as his romantic partner, but as his business co-founder and the primary architect of their firm's cultural authenticity protocols. Ms. Vega brings 20 years of experience in preserving cultural traditions while adapting them for contemporary commercial requirements, Minjun explains to the assembled journalists. Our firm's success in facilitating respectful partnerships between Korean companies and American Latino communities results directly from her expertise in distinguishing authentic cultural exchange from exploitative appropriation. The introduction positions Catalina as professional equal rather than romantic accessory, demonstrating the kind of partnership respect that Korean business culture has been learning to value alongside traditional hierarchical relationships. A Korean business journalist raises the inevitable question about romantic authenticity that's been driving international speculation since their relationship became public knowledge. Mr. Kim, critics suggest that your relationship with Ms. Vega represents an elaborate performance designed to create competitive advantage in Latino market penetration. How do you respond to accusations that your romance is actually sophisticated business strategy? The question contains the kind of cynical assumption that transforms every authentic emotion into potential manipulation. But Minjun has spent 3 months preparing for exactly this challenge to their relationship's legitimacy. I understand skepticism about relationships that cross cultural and economic boundaries, Minjun responds carefully. But authentic partnership creates value that extends beyond individual benefit to community advantage. Our firm's success isn't based on my access to Catalina's cultural knowledge. It's based on our ability to facilitate genuine respect between communities that historically have been divided by economic exploitation rather than united by mutual benefit. An American journalist from the Los Angeles Times asks Catalina directly about her perspective on dating someone whose wealth could theoretically solve most practical problems in her family's immigrant community. Ms. Vega, how do you maintain authentic relationship with someone whose economic resources could create dependency rather than partnership? The question addresses exactly the issue that nearly destroyed their relationship when Director Park's manipulation exposed the power imbalances that wealth creates even in well-intentioned relationships. Partnership requires ongoing negotiation about how economic resources get shared without creating hidden obligations. Catalina responds with the wisdom earned through months of difficult conversations about money, culture, and respect. Minjun and I have separate business accounts, shared household expenses, and clear agreements about how his wealth can support community projects without making me feel like a beneficiary rather than a partner. The answer demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how cross-cultural relationships can navigate economic inequality through transparent communication, rather than pretending that financial differences don't affect power dynamics. But the press conference takes an unexpected turn when a journalist from Seoul Business Journal produces documents that threaten to revive the conspiracy theories that nearly destroyed their relationship 8 months earlier. Mr. Kim, we've obtained financial records showing significant payments from your personal accounts to various Mexican-American community organizations in Los Angeles. These payments began immediately after your relationship with Ms. Vega became serious. How do you explain what appears to be systematic purchasing of community support for your romantic interests? The accusation hits like a perfectly aimed weapon designed to transform Minjun's genuine charitable giving into evidence of calculated manipulation. The financial records are authentic. He has been supporting Latino community organizations. But the implication that these contributions represent relationship strategy, rather than social responsibility, threatens everything they've built together. Minjun feels familiar panic rising, as he recognizes the same pattern that Director Park used to weaponize his medical bill assistance. But before he can formulate a defense that might sound rehearsed or strategic, Catalina takes control of the microphone with the authority of someone who's prepared for exactly this challenge. Those community contributions began before Minjun and I met, she states firmly. His charitable foundation has been supporting Latino business development in Los Angeles for 3 years, long before he knew I existed. I can provide documentation showing his pattern of anonymous giving to organizations throughout the city, including several that compete directly with my family's restaurant. The revelation that Minjun's community support predates their relationship by years rather than months, completely undermines the manipulation accusation while revealing a history of social responsibility that neither of them has previously discussed publicly. Furthermore, Catalina continues, I serve on the board of directors for 2 organizations that receive funding from his foundation. My role is to ensure that Korean corporate contributions actually benefit our community, rather than creating dependency or cultural appropriation. Min-jun doesn't purchase community support. He funds organizations that maintain their independence while building economic sustainability. The explanation transforms the conspiracy theory into evidence of exactly the kind of respectful cultural partnership that their consulting firm promotes professionally. Instead of using wealth to manipulate community opinion, Min-jun has been supporting Latino economic independence through organizations that maintain their cultural integrity while developing financial stability. A Korean journalist asks the follow-up question that will determine whether international media portrays their relationship as authentic partnership or sophisticated deception. If your charitable work predates the relationship, Mr. Kim, why haven't you publicized your community contributions? Korean business culture values corporate social responsibility as evidence of leadership character. The question provides Min-jun with an opportunity to demonstrate the cultural learning that his relationship with Catalina has facilitated, understanding of how different communities prefer to handle recognition and privacy around charitable assistance. Mexican-American community culture values anonymous giving that doesn't create obligation or publicity for recipients, Min-jun explains. Publicizing charitable contributions can feel patronizing rather than supportive, and I learned from Catalina's family that respect sometimes requires keeping generosity private rather than using it for public recognition. The answer reveals exactly the kind of cultural intelligence that authentic cross-cultural relationships can develop, understanding of how different societies approach dignity, independence, and the complex dynamics involved in receiving assistance without losing autonomy. As the press conference concludes, Min-jun realizes that the media scrutiny designed to expose their relationship as performance has instead provided evidence of genuine cultural bridge building that extends far beyond romantic partnership into community development and business innovation that benefits multiple constituencies rather than just individual couples. But the real victory isn't surviving media skepticism. It's demonstrating that love built on authentic cultural respect can create professional opportunities that honor rather than exploit difference, and that partnerships based on genuine equality can withstand systematic attempts to reduce them to strategic calculation or romantic performance. The question that remains is whether 2 people who've proven their relationship can survive corporate warfare and media manipulation can build something lasting that serves as a model for how authentic cross-cultural connection can create economic opportunities that benefit entire communities rather than just privileged individuals. Can a Korean chairman and Mexican chef prove that some bridges are worth building not just between 2 people, but between entire cultures that have more to gain through respectful partnership than through competitive exploitation? 6 months after the press conference that vindicated their relationship and established their consulting firm as a model for authentic cross-cultural business partnerships, Catalina faces the most difficult choice of her adult life. The offer letter from the Smithsonian Institute lies open on her desk at their shared office in downtown Los Angeles, requesting her expertise to curate a comprehensive exhibition on Latino culinary traditions and their role in American cultural integration. The position represents everything she's worked toward professionally: recognition as a leading authority on cultural preservation through food, a platform to educate millions of visitors about her heritage, and the opportunity to ensure that Mexican-American culinary traditions are presented with dignity rather than reduced to exotic entertainment for mainstream consumption. But accepting the Smithsonian offer means relocating to Washington, D.C. For 18 months, leaving behind the consulting firm she's built with Min-jun and the Los Angeles community that supported her family through 3 generations of immigrant struggle. The choice feels like choosing between professional fulfillment and personal loyalty. Exactly the kind of impossible decision that women in cross-cultural relationships often face when career opportunities conflict with relationship stability. Min-jun enters their office carrying coffee and the quarterly reports that demonstrate their firm's remarkable success in facilitating respectful partnerships between Korean corporations and Latino communities throughout California. His expression suggests he's noticed the Smithsonian letter and recognizes the significance of whatever decision Catalina is processing. "The museum position?" he asks gently, settling into the chair across from her desk rather than assuming his usual place beside her, a physical choice that signals respect for her need to think independently rather than collaboratively. "It's everything I've dreamed of professionally," Catalina admits, her voice carrying excitement mixed with anxiety about the implications for their relationship and business partnership. "Curating Latino culinary heritage for national presentation, ensuring authenticity rather than appropriation, educating Americans about our cultural contributions beyond stereotypes and simplifications." "It sounds perfect for your expertise and passion," Minjun responds without hesitation, though Catalina can see the carefully controlled concern in his expression. "When would you need to start?" "September 1st. 18-month commitment with possibility for permanent position if the exhibition exceeds attendance projections. They're offering full relocation assistance, research budget, and staff support for developing educational programming that goes beyond static displays to interactive cultural experiences." The offer represents validation of everything Catalina has learned about presenting her culture to audiences who might approach it with curiosity, condescension, or simple ignorance. The Smithsonian's commitment to authentic representation, rather than tourist-friendly sanitization, suggests they understand her expertise and respect her commitment to dignity in cultural education. "What's holding you back from accepting immediately?" Minjun asks, though his question suggests he already understands the complex loyalties that make this decision difficult, despite its obvious professional appeal. "Us, the firm, my family here. The consulting work we've built that actually benefits our community, rather than just advancing my individual career. The fear that long-distance relationship might not survive 18 months of separation, especially when we've only recently learned how to navigate cultural challenges when we're in the same city. The concerns address practical realities that affect many cross-cultural couples when career opportunities require geographic separation that tests relationship stability, while partners are still learning to trust each other across economic and cultural differences." Minjun sets down his coffee and looks directly at Catalina with the kind of focused attention that's characterized their most important conversations since learning to communicate honestly rather than strategically. "What would you advise a client in this situation?" he asks. "If a Mexican-American businesswoman came to us asking how to balance professional opportunity with relationship stability, what would you tell her about making decisions that honor both her individual ambitions and her partnership commitments?" The question reframes her dilemma, using the cultural bridge-building expertise they've developed professionally, forcing Catalina to apply the same wisdom to her personal situation that she provides to others navigating similar cross-cultural challenges. "I'd tell her that authentic partnership requires both people to support each other's growth, rather than demanding sacrifice for relationship maintenance." Catalina responds slowly. "That love shouldn't require anyone to abandon career opportunities that align with their values and expertise. And if she worried that geographic separation might damage a relationship that's still healing from previous challenges, I'd ask whether her partnership is strong enough to survive testing, or whether it requires constant proximity to remain stable. And I'd remind her that some forms of growth require courage to risk what we have for what we might become." The analysis provides Catalina with clarity about her own situation, while demonstrating the kind of mature reasoning that their relationship has developed through months of learning to prioritize authenticity over security, growth over comfort. "There's something else," Minjun continues, his voice carrying excitement that suggests he's been developing ideas parallel to her own decision-making process. "The Korean Cultural Ministry has been asking our firm to establish an East Coast branch focused on Korean Latino cultural exchange in areas with significant populations of both communities. Washington, D.C. represents exactly the market they want to develop. The revelation that their business could expand to support Catalina's museum work transforms her geographic dilemma into potential professional synergy. Instead of choosing between the Smithsonian position and their consulting partnership, she might be able to integrate both opportunities into expanded cultural bridge building that serves broader communities. You'd move to DC with me. I'd move to DC for the business opportunity that your museum position creates, Minjun clarifies, with the careful distinction that honors her independence, rather than suggesting he's following her career choices. The Smithsonian exhibition will generate exactly the kind of cultural dialogue that Korean companies need to understand before attempting authentic partnerships with Latino communities. The professional synergy appeals to Catalina's business instincts while addressing her emotional concerns about relationship stability under geographic pressure. But it also raises questions about whether Minjun's willingness to relocate represents genuine career interest or romantic accommodation disguised as business strategy. Before she can voice these concerns, Elena enters the office carrying lunch and wearing the expression of someone who's been monitoring her sister's decision-making process with protective interest. Abuela Rosa wants to talk to both of you, Elena announces without preamble. She says this museum decision involves family honor and cultural responsibility that extends beyond individual career planning. The summons from their family matriarch transforms Catalina's personal choice into community consideration that will affect how their extended family interprets her professional success and its impact on cultural representation. 20 minutes later, they sit in La Cocina de Abuela's corner booth while Rosa reviews the Smithsonian offer with the careful attention she's always given to decisions that affect family reputation and community welfare. Mija, Rosa addresses Catalina with the formality reserved for serious family consultations. This opportunity honors our culture by sharing our traditions with respect rather than entertainment. But it also creates responsibility to represent our community with dignity that extends beyond your individual achievement. I understand the cultural weight, Abuela. That's part of what makes the decision difficult, knowing that my performance at the Smithsonian affects how Americans view Mexican-American contributions to national culture. Then let me make the decision easier, Rosa responds with the authority that's guided their family through 3 generations of immigrant challenges. Our culture is strong enough to be shared authentically, and you're prepared enough to present it with the dignity it deserves. Take the museum position, Mija, but take it with our blessing and our expectation that you'll use this platform to build understanding rather than just advancing your career. The family endorsement provides Catalina with community support that transforms her professional opportunity into cultural mission, exactly the kind of meaningful work that justifies temporary separation from familiar networks and comfortable routines. And Minjun, Rosa continues, addressing him directly with the inclusion that signals full acceptance into their family circle. If you follow her to Washington for business reasons, make sure those reasons honor what you've learned about our culture, rather than exploiting it for corporate advantage. We trust you to maintain the authenticity that's made your partnership valuable to our community. The gentle warning reminds Minjun that his cultural integration remains conditional on continued demonstration of respect, rather than automatic acceptance based on romantic relationship. Rosa's approval must be earned continuously through actions that benefit Latino communities, rather than simply accessing them. As they leave the restaurant with Rosa's blessing and Elena's enthusiastic support, Catalina realizes that her decision has evolved from personal choice to family mission that will test everything she's learned about presenting her culture to audiences who might approach it with curiosity, respect, or unconscious condescension. But the woman who's built a consulting firm based on authentic cultural exchange understands that some bridges are worth building on national platforms, and that love secure enough to survive geographic separation might also be strong enough to create professional opportunities that benefit entire communities rather than just individual couples. The Smithsonian offer represents more than career advancement. It's a chance to prove that Mexican-American cultural expertise deserves recognition on the highest levels of national cultural education, and that cross-cultural partnerships can create opportunities for authentic representation that honors heritage while building understanding. Can a relationship built on respect for cultural difference survive the test of geographic separation, while creating opportunities for both partners to advance their individual missions within their shared commitment to authentic cross-cultural bridge building? The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History buzzes with the controlled chaos of exhibition preparation as Catalina oversees the installation of Corazones Unidos, Latino culinary heritage, and American identity. The culmination of 18 months of research, cultural interviews, and careful curation designed to present Mexican-American food traditions with dignity rather than reducing them to exotic entertainment. Min Jun stands beside a display case containing 3 generations of Vega family cooking implements, watching museum technicians position Abuela Rosa's molcajete next to contemporary kitchen tools that represent the evolution of immigrant culinary adaptation. His presence in Washington, D.C. has surprised even him with its professional satisfaction. The East Coast consulting firm has exceeded all projections by facilitating authentic partnerships between Korean corporations and Latino communities from Virginia to New York. The interactive tortilla-making station is ready for testing, Catalina announces, approaching with a tablet displaying visitor flow analytics and educational impact measurements that will determine whether the Smithsonian extends her temporary position into permanent cultural programming leadership. Should I admit that I still can't make perfectly round tortillas after 2 years of practice? Min Jun asks with the self-deprecating humor that's replaced his earlier corporate anxiety about appearing incompetent in any professional context. The exhibition specifically includes a section about cultural learning being a lifelong process rather than a destination, Catalina replies, her smile carrying the warmth that sustained their relationship through geographic separation, professional pressure, and the ongoing challenges of building authentic cross-cultural partnership. Your imperfect tortillas represent exactly the kind of respectful cultural engagement we want to encourage. The exhibition opening represents more than Catalina's professional triumph. It symbolizes everything they've learned about presenting culture authentically, while building bridges that honor difference, rather than demanding assimilation. Korean business leaders, Latino community representatives, and American museum professionals will gather tonight to celebrate cultural exchange that creates understanding rather than appropriation. There's something I need to discuss with you, Min Jun says, his voice carrying the careful tone that's preceded their most important conversations throughout their relationship. Something that affects both the consulting firm and our personal future, in ways that require collaborative decision-making. Catalina sets down her tablet, giving him the focused attention that's characterized their communication style since learning to prioritize honesty over strategic conversation management. The Korean Cultural Ministry has offered to fund a permanent cultural exchange center in Los Angeles, with satellite offices in Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. They want our firm to serve as the primary consultants for developing authentic Korean Latino business partnerships throughout North America. The proposal represents validation of everything they've built professionally, while creating opportunities for expansion that could benefit entire communities rather than just individual couples. But it also requires decisions about geographic focus, cultural responsibility, and the balance between business success and community service. What would that mean for your role with Mintech, for my position here at the Smithsonian, for the life we've been building in DC? It means choosing between maintaining connection to my Korean corporate heritage or fully committing to the cultural bridge-building work that's become my actual passion. Min Jun responds, with the clarity that's emerged from 2 years of learning to distinguish between inherited obligation and authentic calling. Before Catalina can respond, Elena enters the exhibition space carrying a garment bag and wearing the excited expression of someone managing logistics for a significant family event. The dress fitting was perfect, she announces, then notices the serious conversation she's interrupted. Should I come back later for whatever major life decision you're processing now? Stay, Catalina says immediately. If this affects the consulting firm and our family's involvement in cultural representation work, Elena should be part of the conversation. The inclusion of family perspective in their business decisions demonstrates the Mexican cultural integration that Min Jun has internalized. Understanding that individual choices affect extended family networks and community relationships in ways that require collective consideration rather than isolated decision-making. The Korean Cultural Ministry proposal comes with one significant condition, Min Jun continues, his voice carrying excitement mixed with nervousness about Catalina's potential response. They want the Cultural Exchange Center to be launched with a formal ceremony that demonstrates authentic Korean-Mexican cultural integration. Specifically, They're requesting that the Korean project director and the Mexican cultural consultant participate in a traditional wedding that incorporates both cultural traditions. The revelation transforms their business conversation into personal proposal, but delivered with the kind of cultural awareness that honors both their family's expectations about marriage decisions and their own commitment to authentic partnership. "Are you asking me to marry you for business reasons or personal reasons?" Catalina asks with the direct communication style that's prevented misunderstandings throughout their relationship. "I'm asking you to marry me because I love you, because our partnership has created something more valuable than either of us could achieve independently, and because I want to spend the rest of my life learning your culture while sharing mine." Minjun responds without hesitation. The Korean Cultural Ministry proposal simply provides us with resources to celebrate our commitment, while advancing the cultural bridge-building work that's become our shared mission. Elena claps with unrestrained joy while Catalina processes the integration of personal and professional considerations that characterizes cross-cultural relationships where individual choices carry broader community implications. "What kind of wedding ceremony would honor both cultures without tokenizing either one?" Catalina asks, her question demonstrating the cultural sensitivity that will determine whether their marriage becomes authentic integration or performative symbolism. Traditional Korean ceremony in the morning, Mexican celebration in the afternoon, with rituals that honor both families' spiritual traditions and community values, Minjun explains, revealing preparation that suggests he's been considering this proposal for months, rather than making an impulsive, business-motivated decision. The Lazo ceremony, Las Arras Matrimoniales, the Korean tea ceremony, and musical traditions from both cultures integrated respectfully, rather than simply combined. Elena adds, demonstrating that the Vega family has also been involved in planning discussions. The detailed cultural preparation indicates that Minjun's proposal represents genuine desire for authentic cross-cultural marriage, rather than strategic business partnership, disguised as romantic gesture. "Yes," Catalina says simply, her answer carrying the certainty that's characterized their most important decisions since learning to trust each other with complete honesty. "Yes to marrying you. Yes to the Cultural Exchange Center. Yes to building something permanent that serves both our communities while honoring our individual heritage." The acceptance creates immediate celebration, but also practical planning requirements for a wedding that will serve as both personal commitment and cultural demonstration, exactly the kind of integration challenge that their consulting work has prepared them to navigate successfully. 6 months later, the Korean Cultural Center of Los Angeles transforms into a living museum of authentic cross-cultural integration, as families, friends, and business colleagues gather to witness a wedding that's been planned with the same attention to cultural authenticity that's defined Minjun and Catalina's professional collaboration. Abuela Rosa occupies the place of honor reserved for family matriarchs, wearing traditional Mexican attire while conversing in careful English with Minjun's parents, who've flown from Seoul wearing hanbok that honors their cultural heritage while demonstrating respect for the bicultural ceremony their son has chosen. The morning Korean ceremony unfolds with the formal precision that Korean culture requires: tea service to honor ancestors, exchanges of wooden ducks symbolizing fidelity, and bows that demonstrate respect for family hierarchy and cultural tradition. Minjun wears traditional hanbok, while Catalina demonstrates her months of preparation by performing Korean customs with obvious sincerity rather than awkward mimicry. "The integration is remarkable," observes the Korean Cultural Ministry representative who's been documenting the ceremony for cultural exchange educational materials. "This represents authentic bicultural marriage rather than cultural tourism or superficial combination of incompatible traditions." The afternoon Mexican celebration explodes with mariachi music, traditional dancing, and the Lazo ceremony where Catalina's family rosary is looped around both partners in a figure 8, symbolizing eternal unity. Minjun's attempt at Mexican folk dancing draws laughter and applause that signal family acceptance rather than cultural condescension. The Arras ceremony, Abuela Rosa announces with satisfaction as she presents 13 gold coins, blessed by both Catholic priest and Korean cultural elder, represents not only financial partnership, but cultural wealth that both families bring to this union. The blending of spiritual traditions creates authentic integration, rather than religious competition. demonstrating the kind of respectful cultural bridging that their consulting firm promotes professionally. Elena serves as maid of honor, while Taejun documents the celebration with photographs that capture genuine joy rather than performative cultural display. Their presence represents the extended family support systems that have made authentic cross-cultural integration possible despite geographical separation and professional pressures. The consulting firm's success, the museum exhibition's impact, and now this marriage demonstrate that authentic cultural exchange creates value for entire communities rather than just individual couples. Secretary Jung observes to Korean business leaders who've traveled from Seoul to witness their former CEO's unconventional life choices. As evening approaches and the celebration transitions from formal ceremony to family party, Min-jun and Catalina find themselves standing together in La Cocina de Abuela, the restaurant that's been transformed for reception use, but remains fundamentally the place where they first learned to love across cultural boundaries. From that first night when I spilled mole sauce on your shirt to today when we're married in front of both our families, did you ever imagine we'd create something this complex and beautiful together? Catalina asks, her wedding dress combining traditional Mexican embroidery with Korean silk in ways that honor both heritages without compromising either. I imagined wanting to spend my life learning your culture. Min-jun responds, his expression carrying the contentment that's replaced his earlier corporate anxiety about success measurement and social expectations. But I never imagined that loving you would teach me how to build bridges professionally that benefit entire communities, rather than just advancing individual careers. The Korean Cultural Exchange Center officially opens next month with programming designed to facilitate authentic business partnerships, cultural education, and community development projects that honor difference rather than demanding assimilation. Their consulting firm has become a model for how cross-cultural relationships can create professional opportunities that serve broader social purposes. The most important bridge we've built isn't between Korea and Mexico, Catalina observes, as mariachi music mingles with traditional Korean instruments in combinations that shouldn't work musically, but create harmony through respectful integration. It's between the people we were individually and the partnership we've become together. 1 year after their bicultural wedding, Min-jun and Catalina stand before the United Nations Cultural Exchange Council, presenting their model for authentic cross-cultural business partnerships to representatives from 50 countries seeking replicable frameworks for international cooperation that honors local traditions while facilitating global economic development. The Seoul Los Angeles Cultural Exchange Center has exceeded all success metrics by facilitating over 200 Korean Latino business partnerships, creating jobs in both communities while preserving cultural integrity through authentic collaboration rather than economic exploitation. Their consulting firm has expanded to include Chinese-Mexican, Japanese-Brazilian, and Korean-Colombian partnership facilitation throughout the Americas. Cross-cultural relationships require constant negotiation, Catalina explains to the international audience. But that negotiation process creates strength rather than friction when both partners approach difference with curiosity rather than conquest, respect rather than appropriation. Min-jun nods agreement, adding, economic partnerships that honor cultural difference create sustainable value for entire communities rather than extracting profit for individual companies. Our model demonstrates that authentic respect generates more lasting business success than strategic cultural manipulation. The presentation represents the culmination of 3 years spent learning that love built on genuine cultural bridge building can create professional opportunities that serve broader purposes than individual happiness or financial achievement. In the audience, Abuela Rosa sits beside Min-jun's parents, all three representing family perspectives that have evolved from protective skepticism to enthusiastic support for a relationship that's created value extending far beyond romantic partnership. Their grandchildren will inherit bicultural competencies that prepare them for an increasingly interconnected world where authentic cross-cultural skills create professional advantages. The secret ingredient, Rosa had told the international media covering their UN presentation, is that they learned to love each other's cultures before they loved each other. Respect came first, romance followed naturally. Elena and Taijun manage the cultural center's daily operations, while Minjun and Catalina travel internationally, consulting for governments and corporations seeking authentic models for cultural integration that benefits rather than threatens local communities. Their marriage has become a professional asset that demonstrates the practical viability of respectful cross-cultural collaboration. 5 years after Minjun first walked into La Cocina de Abuela and discovered that authentic love requires learning someone's culture with the same dedication applied to mastering professional skills. The restaurant displays photographs documenting a journey from cultural curiosity to international cultural leadership. The corner booth where they shared their first honest conversation now bears a small plaque, where authentic cross-cultural partnership began with respect, survived manipulation, and transformed into sustainable community benefit. Korean and Spanish translations ensure that visitors from both cultures understand the significance of genuine cultural bridge building. Minjun teaches tortilla making to their 2-year-old daughter, Carmen Rosa Kim Vega, who switches effortlessly between Korean, Spanish, and English while demonstrating the kind of multicultural competence that represents the future of authentic global citizenship. Her presence symbolizes everything they've learned about integration that honors, rather than diminishes difference. She'll never have to choose between cultures, Catalina observes, watching Minjun patiently guide small hands through masa preparation techniques that connect her to 3 generations of Vega family tradition while introducing Korean cooking methods that represent paternal heritage. Because we chose to build bridges rather than walls, respect rather than conquest, partnership rather than performance, Minjun agrees, his Korean-accented Spanish now fluent enough for complex family conversations and business negotiations that require cultural nuance rather than simple translation. The Seoul Los Angeles Mexico City Cultural Exchange Network has facilitated over 1,000 international business partnerships, while maintaining authentic cultural representation that benefits local communities rather than exploiting them for corporate profit. Their consulting firm has become the internationally recognized standard for respectful cross-cultural business development. But the greatest success isn't measured in economic impact or professional recognition. It's demonstrated in their ability to love across difference without requiring either partner to abandon authentic cultural identity for relationship harmony. Korean business precision integrates with Mexican family warmth to create something richer than either culture could achieve independently. As evening settles over Los Angeles and mariachi music drifts from the restaurant's kitchen where 3 generations of Vega women teach Korean visitors to prepare traditional mole while learning kimchi techniques in return, Minjun realizes that the most valuable bridges aren't built between countries or corporations. They're built between people willing to approach difference with curiosity rather than fear, respect rather than conquest, love rather than performance. The Korean billionaire who once removed his platinum cufflinks to escape corporate expectations has learned that authentic success isn't measured by stock prices or board positions, but by the capacity to create partnerships that benefit entire communities while honoring the cultural wisdom that makes each tradition valuable and worthy of preservation. And the Mexican chef who once worried that love might require abandoning cultural identity has discovered that authentic partnership amplifies rather than diminishes heritage, creating opportunities for cultural sharing that builds understanding rather than appropriation, bridges rather than barriers, communities rather than conquests. Their love story concludes not with dramatic resolution, but with sustainable integration. 2 cultures becoming one family serving multiple communities demonstrating that authentic cross-cultural respect creates more lasting value than any individual achievement or corporate empire. In La Cocina de Abuela, where Korean business leaders learn Mexican cooking techniques while Mexican entrepreneurs master Korean business protocols, the future of authentic globalization unfolds one shared meal at a time, one respectful conversation at a time, one bridge at a time. Because sometimes the greatest success stories aren't about conquering difference, but about learning to love it, honor it, and transform it into strength that serves purposes larger than any individual dream or ambition could achieve alone. In memory of every cross-cultural love that has dared to build bridges where others saw only barriers, and in celebration of the communities that have been enriched by partnerships based on authentic respect rather than strategic advantage. Love that honors difference creates possibilities that conquest never could.